전 배슬로쇼 내가 또 스톤샤 제대로 주고 되는 랑부터에 연대노 상원이 현 제수집에 연대대 대한 지게도 통로되고 주임이 주신 저 동에 차가면서 이게 또 보셔는 보면데 신이 담았다면 저한테 제서 와다라 라마마나 왔다네 왜서 zem바 마도바 디부치 주어서 잘매도 달라 주시래 막해바니 제대로 뛰어 몰라 개신의 되지기로 뒤지 로라 겨와라 소 저니 최대 그노 다과데 니구루소라 메다와라 잠바데 이제군나라데 뭐 보도외상안에 장안라 레미부지 잠베 최셰지 제데 르수지야데 그제 마용 로냠다 원범에서 온다와지 그바 임버다 전세니 신여던 라고 좋아데 뭐 교방원이 양양 체베 명예와데 체베 가져서 뭐 보도외상에 러버숨다 되니도 와다 닝저왕아 조인 내 여러분 상주군 라 만도 대바야 매 교와서 봐야 매베 라오 전도 잡아래 저와양 매 대명가망아 예베로는 소여발라 배 년도라 마케바 예미 연세대 저와양 디군지 다른 미국 냠바데 미시데 나고 예베 소녀라 배송오 대단나 라보송로 주볼래 매바 대다가 나와 뭐 연대 저랑 가서 주원님에게 외식을 전된게 나와 저베 소 주벌로 전에 전에 원 그게 결혼돼 여담시 마바나 매도시 마와다도 에메와 식성도 주베시도 띵에제 야올래 치매들로 결혼해요 또 매와 왕보도 아무도 보다도 연로들은 아버 저저 넘어서는 년원미 제 띵인진 시로 남주 숨라 양아들은 지도 기불라다 전대단에 지르대 뼈에 나와 용어제 전다다가 예를 좀 전에 미장으로 예매대라는 거 보면 예매대도 중에서도 지메 기부대 기부 라레데 제노 기부들라라 와 관계 소원 제와의 뼈인가 봐줘도 뼈는 갈라면 이제 뭐 되는 점에서 뭐 수준에 앞에서 와다 심해 되는 뭐 종류 들어가는 수준에 제 한모순의 영어도 나와서 그처럼 대단한 남들 주에 라마데 메데니면서 와이면 라마데 먼저 제다 셰바라 샤라 천이는 데서 와다 베바 자신 로마 때부터는 이장아 되다 셰바제네 신이자다 난데 봐서라 배도 참주
Qualities of trainings, while not striving diligently to practice them, are not suitable to be the teachers. To be teachers, that sort of meaningless praise is only words. And it is similar to when someone who diligently seeks sandalwood asks one who makes a living by explaining the good qualities of sandalwood, "Do you have any sandalwood?" And that person replies, "No." Sutra says, in later times there will be many monks without vows. without vows, wanting to say I'm learned. They will praise ethical discipline, but will not strive diligently at their own ethical discipline. Having also said this concerning concentration, wisdom, and liberation.
지름직 돔데 대달 남주 주변 라마네 땡긴되면 싸워인베스 라마 땜을 되바 남기 니 대다 셰버 잘라스 생이던 데뭐 소화라 매버 자신세 어다 되게 한데 속고한테 텔레비전 장에서 계십시오 저자네 주구로 유진의 식수이었어 하나데 라마도 주고스 컨트롤 해서 계시죠 왕에디 당에 어떤 만트셔지 계셔 남중에 셰되기스 라마도 주고로 무시셔기스 라마인의 주고 입어 뭐죠 고물로 주시셨으나 저도가 라마를 받아 주변고전은 라라는 면도 장전의 면도 수심도가 다 주고 있는 라마 입어 뭐죠 다 주고 샴지싱을 해서 제디 라면 신선거 말에 라라는 라면 민 주고 민이 야래 다 주고 있는 라마 입어 뭐죠 아니 이거 입어 뭐 다음에 찬대 기부터 부터 제디 주고 가서 당은지요 되부터 제디 주고에 라마에 어디서 라미 자상가 나랑도 배배지도 날이네 다가래 근데 개미지도 날에 된다도가 소부지도 날에 배지 야래 지금 주구를 사서 실어베이나 아니 지금 자주 모르지 그게 된기 계신이 신이 그저 고기부터 좀 마셔보세 배절로 니슈 배제다 숨주스면 저 공리야 대나면다 남바 뒤뒤다 타마 되는 순간 좀 저어야 그 돌세 개면 나머지가 투송 나 개면 나머지 아야 디스도 당사인이 자나나리아 편의 영역이 아니 라마들의 최기 개부 인생인데 연구도스 엔 개면 나머지 대화시다 제제 지도자네 쇼고 걸리리야 등유는 받침배 그돌라 최기 개부 인생인데 저 고야디 무국도스 아니 비미국도스 어디서도 근데 되게 많이 내지 탑시자야 말이지. 나 탑시자게요 말이지. 나 장할 때도 그게 제도 말이지. 근데 그냥 저네 신인기 생이 최주성이야. 디시장 받지. 아니 최이 개분이스는 옆에 그돌이야. 최주의 상도가 면도가 심주체. 심주체에 걸려야 라면 두시 마셔 체제. 아니 최 계시치 졸링치 엔데는 뭐는 저기다 최주 디디 상대버지 산대시도나 디 차직 투베스로 니 투베스로 매버체 윤 파도도 싱네 에는 뭐는 지부게 이지페르시도나 엔 라멘 두시잖아 최슈스 도슬레 간다 로메 라마를 파슈다 당토버지 거래 디베 계셔버다 로마 가게 미싱에 대반의 여댕에 대반의 박을 요소들이 점심 시험대 요래 대반의 박을 요 철도 남식이 싫었다 내수 마싱이 심이나 애니 르부츠나 거지사디 연구레스 애니 너무 풍르자가 그냥 요래 자진이 인도 어디 점심 소나디 대다 시험을 잘 신이든 데뭐 소알아 배버 자신 다가는 신을 너무 대버 남지 장 대다 시험을 전에 신이 다던 데말로 배버 차오 손도
So we're on page 74. The second last paragraph, it says, the guru who helps you to achieve liberation is the foundation of your deepest aspiration. Therefore, you who wish to rely on a guru should understand these defining characteristics and strive to seek one who has them. Also, those who wish to have students should understand these characteristics and strive to possess them. So with regard to this passage, first, earlier today I met some Mongolian TV crew, and that they interviewed me and asked about the difference between Lama and Tulku, or reincarnated teachers. And so I said that I as I usually say, that there is a four alternative between a tulku and a lama, or four possibilities, which means that there are those who are lamas, but not really reincarnated, teachers as such. Like in Tibetan community, we have people who are called tulkus, so not so. And so, for example, Master Nagarjuna was a great lama, great master, but he was not known to have been recognized as a tulku reincarnation of a reincarnated lama. And then we have in Tibetan community people who are recognized as tulkus, and they have big labrangs, their own called household and residential and estate and so forth. Maybe very living quite an luxurious life and so forth, but they're with lagging any kind of knowledge and understanding of the Dharma. Sometimes they even proved a disgrace to the tradition. They are not lama as such, although they may be tulkus. And then we have others who are both lamas and tulkus. Like there are people who are very learned and who are really good practitioners, and then recognized as tulkus as also. And so these are the reliable people. And then of course, there are the fourth alternative is neither the Lama nor Tulku. And then we, amongst the Tibetans, as well as in Chinese community and perhaps in the Mongolian community also, we have to people who just take somebody easily as a reverend called like lamas or one's teachers, but without really knowing the qualities of the teachers. And so they are not able to see, even if somebody is learned and a good practitioner and so forth, they are not able to see those qualities. Rather, they go after the names or title Lama or Tulku. And about 20 or 30 years ago, I met one Chinese from mainland China who came to see me, and then he said that in those days there were Tibetans coming from Tibet to mainland China and claiming to be like Dharma Rajas or the king of Dharma. And then Chinese called people kind of received teachings and so forth from them, and eventually, as they spend more and more time with these people proclaiming to be Dharma Rajas, what they found was that they actually had come to China proper for seeking money and women. And so he asked me whether I can do something about this from here. And I said to him that, of course, I'm in India. There's nothing that much I can do from here. But what is important for you, Chinese people, is to actually learn about these 10 qualifications of a teacher, a qualified Dharma teacher. And having learned these qualities of the qualifications of a teacher well, then keep them in your mind, and then when somebody comes to mainland China or China proper claiming to be Dharma Raja, you can actually scrutinize the person, investigate and check whether this person has these qualities or not. And of course, you should examine the person over a long period of time, and then you can see whether the person really is reliable, having these qualifications or not. And so students should be able to examine these qualities in the teachers, not just falling for some teacher merely out of faith. Of course, Rinpoche says that we have some sort of faith, but that is not enough. We need to use our intelligence and understand these qualifications and check the Lama to see whether they are qualified or not.
хийгээд ном эрдмээ заалгаа явах юм бол та нарт алдаа гарахгүй та нар хохирохгүй гэж би тэр хүнд зөвлөсөн гэж. Энээс өөр бол одоо надад хэлэх юм байхгүй. Тэгэхээр Монголч гэсэн зарим ийм тохиолдлууд байж магадгүй. Тэгэхээр та бүхэн ч гэсэн энэ дээр анхааралтай байх хэрэгтэй. Юу мэддэхгүй өөрийгөө ч юм уу бол өөрөө зарим нэг улсууд нь хувилгаан гэж нэг өргөмжлөөд тэгээ нөгөө хувилгаан нэр зүгөөд өргөмжлөгдсөн хүмүүс маань янз бүрийн буруу зураг юм хийгээд ингээд хүнд хор нөлөөтэй юм хийгээ яваад иж магадгүй. Тэгэхээр тэрэн дээр та бүхэн өөрсдөө анхааралтай хувилгаан гэд нэр зүүсэн хүн болгон номын багшийн эрдмийг бүрдүүлсэн байх шаардлагагүй учраас тэр тал дээр та бүхэн анхааралтай байх хэрэгтэй шүү гэж.
Tüji wange yunde da so ni wora ka da mani na da na prange je wa de che da kolo je be jing da ne da da ya ma la do me do da de je ne zhu be ye ne zhuo me na le jing gu zhuo da ba me ju ro de ne lo de zo sa ma sa da je me jing ni jun ji me cha la ja wa ba ba je je ba la wong bo de me ya ba ma je jin be ni je je me de da ko mo da ni mo sa ba 长时间的那些去没去，真正说那么下巴说的，我就说那代表照顾人，但是原来没有那么到这边种的许多根本那么有这些，那么是这些这么觉得不能，我照顾这么些超了。这你用着送的检查了，马上送了。这几个看上说的，去shamanism 是他的虽然者的这边这个就上个到朝原来可是呢这样送呢我就没得资助送你的长时间的他先去米去是的话你说是吧把热养空度啊呀
And so in this text it says, and not worship other deities and Brahmins. Just after the last line that I've read, forbear hunger, thirst and afflictions. It says right after that, and not worship other deities and Brahmins. And so after, here it gives 16 different features of teachers. And so yesterday we talked about shamanism. So this is a reference to not worship spirits.
Бус гэдэг дээр нь болохоор орны шашинтай ямар ч холбоогүй бусад одоо зүйлүүдийг хэлж байгаа. Тэгэхээр тийм улсуудтай одоо юу гэдэг нарийн дотны холбоо үүсгэх тэдэртэй одоо холбогдсон өөрсдийнх нь одоо шүтэж биширдэг юмд нь одоо юу гэдэг шүтэж биширх юм бол нөгөө аврал олсон чухал дээд 3-аас өөр юм шүтэж биширсэн болчих учраас тэгж болохгүй. Энэ ярьж байгаа юм бол чинь болохоор номын нөхөр гэдэг чинь ямар эрдэмтэн хүн байх ёстой юм гэхээр ийм байх хэрэгтэй гэж хэлж байна. Номын нөхөртэй харилцаж одоо ном эрдэм суралцж байгаа усуд болоод ийм эрдэм өөртөө агуулсан байх хэрэгтэй гэж хэлж байгаа. Дотор нь энэ гарч байгаа. Тэр энийг бид нар анхаарах хэрэгтэй. Энэ бол өнөөдөр Монгол яригдаад байгаа бөө үед янз бүрийн одоо сонин бэлтгэл заадаг өөр бас шашны урсгалууд байна шүү дээ, тийм ээ. Тэр болгонтой бүгднтэй нь одоо яг болгоомжтой харьцах хэрэгтэй гэдгийг одоо сануулж байна.
我现在项目也讲着lập这个都通用过人，那的这这边他的路线就这里呀，这我看就这当没说说到照顾的这里啊，这个当年把这边说的这些，这是人间给要嘛的，那地里边太不了这些，哦，那地里边我边五洲那边路边这边爬这生儿是不是这些，点那是几年前呢，讲着lập这个要的，这是군대 국공매 군대 국공매 기주 파본 그런 것이야. 아니 되게 시부지 자시부지 지 제베이나 잠줄 럽지도 개그르다 처리 나도가 군대 국공매 처리를 까네 가토스 갑경소 난도가.
So, of course, regarding like worship of spirits and worldly deities and so forth, will come later with reference to the precepts of having taken refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Of course, when you actually relate to the worldly gods and deities and so forth, we may relate to them as kind of assistance and creating the conducive conditions for our practice of Dharma, and therefore in that in that kind of relationship, you may be able to give gifts, offerings and so forth as gifts to these deities so that they can help you, but not so doing. We should not do so in order that we actually give in to them, like in the sense of taking refuge in these worldly deities, because that's when you actually go against the precept of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And therefore, during the 13th Dalai Lama's time, the 13th Dalai Lama himself had scolded the Pabongka Rinpoche, saying that if you give in yourself, submit yourself to the worldly deities, then you actually go against the precepts of having taken refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So, this is in relation to the evil spirit called Töngel, whom Pabongka was propitiating.
чин сэтгэлээсээ тэрийг шүтэх юм бол одоо юу гэдэг авралт барин шүтэх юм бол бид нар бурхны шашинтан хүн байх ёстой тэр нэг зарчим юмнаас хазаач чинь гэсэн үг байхгүй. Зөвхөн ном чухагдээд, хурав чухагдээд, бурхан чухагдээд энэ гуравт бид нар чин сэтгэлээсээ аврал одоо аштын авралт барихаас өөр юмыг аштын авралт барихгүй гэсэн одоо тийм одоо юу гэдэг тангарахтаа болж хөрж ийн гэсэн үг байхгүй. Бурхны шашинтан болно гэдэг чинь. Тэр энэнтэй харьцуулсан байна гэж хатуу зарлиг буудгыг зэмлэж ийсэн юм аа.
哎呀，是，好了，今年用手送给介绍了，马上送了。天那么那样，从手些就全部送，我说不对送，这我那边现在今年都送吧。用手说，我说唱完了就搞了几日，我说这边介绍当的嘛了，马上下午，你把等于我们今年呢，时间把它送的对，因为也不能介绍我些。罗马不用的那么些都民间也不能，没那些学送当的把这个年呗，那都容我当。 这什么称呢？确毛病用的那么用的多，能给用多那我们就了，这嘛是万年不用的，那么就把个啥的用的多，那个用的没那我送的。那也成也得到，马上呢，确毛病新年先用说到就，年不经济往对吧？经济多就那么什么不用的多，这把它送。但是新年成年他们这边上这个年，讲个的了，这我是把个这些那么等把了，成年得到。 참고해서 달라 수를 내봐니 초롱을 내봐대 대연의 대지면에 배경되면 레버리셰베데 매니에 우먼이 원래 초롱을 메세면 왜 시번이야 동면으로 시에서 뭐 따로 초롱은 랑글로 잡아다가 신이 출루라 시당하고 어디 결혼 저때 여러분 세상 가서这边找了给我的，快乐就是人就是什么时候弄的，炒的都是老是碰不下，现在个都是的这边找我吃个多，但安住去路、宽住去路，天地现在的些个多，是啊，出路呢，让个路了，吃吧的，先有路了，先去路了，先当我，听着我的让个就了，当然多个的。 전주 선배수 타바 레버랑한테 봐 땅대 캠보당 러변이 쇼라 럽도 나바당 그거 저것이서 베시로 대중이 처가 뭐냐나 로소를 내장스 레셰 람양 딱바당 니셰 람땅나니 남버 집에 르투메나 너도 무르 티니 코에 로탄데 버거디 테니 니고베 쳐 돈네 니부 레노스 단 레셰 니셰 제시버 그지 이게 르르 우대점 수아들이 랭이지별로 이 투den싱 세송샤야 되리자. 아야. 디니 잠기 초하고면 냠나 디니 유니 리미 주년다는 미좀나 너도 미로베 돈도냐와 쳐보던데 뭐 거소 제발에 쳐다가 쳐야 마와로 그보다 이 때문에는 내가 rozonzo 보다나 쳐라 뭐 되니 쳐와 냐베세 이래 보다 쳐다가 쳐야 마와로 그보체 뭐죠 니셰도 네벨레션즈 보디 쇼 시부디 뒤에는 다 바이엔라만 개진 도로와는 소나보 라메 찌르면 줘야 돼. 너무 창마상 다라 상나가고 마상나 신문순지도 참여해 줄라면 봐줘. 그 땡기 줘야 되다. 셰버를 제대. 대다게 신이 미신노 똑줄 민주에 된지 몰래냐 봐 요로. 다 대대비 라마천이도 대바 되게 라마천이도 대바 되로 그래서나. 수부터 지들 때문에 주님의 대들은 내다가 대바 때문에 라마천이도 대매 대 콜로샤바들 레코르 달라스 다 점지 송전 야고 쇼도가 다 되베 대단해던 데바 테스 라마신이던 데미데 콜로샤바터 레코르 달라스 신이던 데보다 추지까지 never 차데스 지 설계로 지 당하는 생기시게 염주지야 된다 지겨 말이스 어디에 뒤송이래 가서 사뱅기 사제ben지 예 다도 노블라서 뭐 중세삼지 녀소라 그는 지신 제버체스 아니 당에 양중도 가다에네 지금 천디집에 다베 땡긴되면 자와도 처리다 되네 딱세 매버체네 배 춘이 키 세션도 강천남래 렘버통스 송도가 사와된데 인도 가슬라는 지리 그런 거들 나봤는 시 강사가 다 나죠 처를 딱세 거여야 돼 빼게 좀 버리셔 어떤지 다 되네 진디스다
And so, with regard to how the students relies on the teacher, Rinpoche says one who has these qualifications of a suitable recipient of the teachings should investigate well whether the guru has the requisite characteristics as explained above. Then this student should receive the teachings kind words from the guru's qualified teacher. Even so, the biographies of Geshe Damba. And so what this shows is that we should actually should not take things just because it is said by somebody or without doing any kind of checking of the qualities of the teaching and so forth. And in other words, we should not take things for granted, nor should we just take it without doing any kind of analysis. And as Sakya Pandita has said, that when it comes to dealing with some trivial kind of this worldly kind of stuff, where people pay so much attention and so much put so much energy into checking when the quality of the thing and whether it is genuine and authentic or not and so forth. I mean, they spend so much time and energy, but when it comes to the Dharma, they take it as if it's something which is like easy to acquire, like a dog's food. And so this should not be the attitude that our attitude towards the Dharma. When it comes to the Dharma, just as you pay much attention and do investigation into the worldly things, you should actually do a lot of checking and an examination of the teaching, and then also see the qualifications, whether the teachers have the qualifications or not, and so forth, thoroughly, and not just take things for granted. So we're on page 77.
넘버로 달아봐 매전데 성부 라마망 되면 셰세라냐 배 캄네 전배 남거를 괜히지 취시진도 몰라야냐 배 그런 남기 그런 이제 당신 제배 제가 맛을 알아 보니 중송게 기시도 몰라 라마 뇽데 알래 매바라 보도도 고버지 라마니 지니 강래 가저 바라 로마상배 교통신 마대바 제외는 라바기 신도별로 레고라 카찬베 저다 자송데 신도메 바라나베 저다 자오
It's two benefits. Geshe Dromtempa had few gurus, not more than 5. Bodowa and Gampogo.
신이도 그들이야 내가 신이 때문에 배연상 샴리야래 신이 때문에 배연 상민도 전에 신이 때문에 전화해야지 되네네 마tembe 경데 다 상상벌이 산지 고발을 녀와로 써봐 아니 신이 때문에 개 아니 산지 고발을 다 지린지린으로 어디서 되니 마tembe 경 다 되네 텐주 로나 야 님이 좀 여봐 있잖아요 다 템베케 마템베 경 텐주 로베 님이 디르 섬다 엔데네다 신이 수신도 템벌 다 땡고도 사베베 스네베 이지로베 메바로 찌지 다 레베크돌 인 자어 대바 정하는 말레투 레용거리 어도스리 진짜 잘라 동북고발에 세부 계획신이라 예고서 원내면 대배서 받아지네 되고 대다정 돈은 실례 라완 돈에 전이 라면 왕도 돈에 분상보다 무슨 분상보다 배 자와라 라완도 민주의 파용으로 다신 대왕도 당내 아신 제바다라 계획신이 경으로 따오 다들 상제 무수베 띵전에 장 대탐제도 랑념도 되면 계획 신이 대로신도 저거 송소 다양 제부시 디슈고데 양직 송도가 돼 태양 생의 상황식을 제기 수루로 나셔진 미둑 송호스 다 분석부터 심신에 별람에 가리 배수부터 중고레스 야 제부시 때만 세세시나니 태양 생의 상황식을 제기 수루로 나셔진 미둑스 나고 다 어떻게 좀 왔어
So how to rely on in thought. So basically, His Holiness mentioned that after doing the 6 preliminary practices, which come later, and then you come to the point of relying on a guru. So when it comes to the point of relying on a guru, what you should, how you should go about with it, and is first see the benefit of relying on a guru, and then once you understand those benefits of relying on a guru, such as attaining ultimately Buddhahood, and also through this reliance on a guru, you become closer and closer. You come closer and closer to Buddhahood, and so forth. And then this joy of relying on a guru, is engendered in you. And then you also need to see the disadvantages of not relying on a guru, and then also the faults of wrong way of relying on a guru, and as well. And so through these, what happens is you've come to feel that you must actually have someone whom you rely on as your guru, and then you develop and come to develop this the root of all the qualities, which is the faith in a guru. You come to develop that faith in the guru, and go on. So reading this passage from on page 78, where it says, this refers to a fully qualified teacher. It is said that you should not let just anyone lead you around by the nose. And so you should not actually give yourself in to anyone who claims to be teachers, like an animal being led by the nose. You should not give yourself in to anyone.
энэ дээр одоо багшийг шүтснээс хойш багш юу хэлсэн, юу сургасан болныг нь бид нар дааж бүрдэх хэрэгтэй гэж хэлэх юм бол зарим усуудад ямар
So this is under the title
багш ингээд буруу
or the sub division, a general indication of the attitudes needed to rely on the teacher. It starts by saying the array of Stark Sutra states that you should respect and serve the teacher with 9 attitudes. And so this includes the key points of all the attitudes that you should have in order to rely on the teacher. If these are further condensed, 4 attitudes remain. They are as follows. 1, the attitude which is like a dutiful child. This means to give up your independence and submission.
장에 잡아 남라 케행에 계시 전주 선번 디도도 전에 가신도 좀도 여버 선음 쳐 다쿠도 민조와 견도로와 지시시 송와 따로 쿠르코와나 시도 자와라 조 레면 쿠유그 리더베스는 동네 지종과 탐지 기 미고워 장아 루고는 쇼잖아 공부 연단 바라 창제베 감신의 조슈는 잘라 준두가 최슈베 내매다와 나버게베 강사소 대반야 지슴시 제대 특신지 신년라든지 최연냐 뭐 다래래 만용와 임베 저게 되지 송어다 저버지게 전데 베세면에 내래 탐제 녀소 라와 라야 이 미치고를 저데 장도로베 군라 내 접수지 중에 덤배 나서도 시인에 좀 차대 간에 중차 매버 사가르 깜부 요 조연도는 매지 제가 좁은 두배 조연시는 아래 최도 보시게 자가나야 요 송어 따로 차들어와 대비선이 아예 당한 체외가제도 나뭐 봉시면 랑을라말레 마와는 뭐 기시대베시에는 명아제 이게 물론이 추면 좀 송어 당 장애신의 수요지 저는 리즈모 강토하는 거 수르지 원도감 충부 강마와네 원 뜻송어다로 특별히 비스면 내면 라면서 와신도 자가왜 쿠르치원 나면 뭐 조신도 뭐 기대비스면 내면 라면 예신 시행을 들으면 좋아데 기시 하술라 듈룽벤제리게 cấp 전발라 갑견수거다 사실 로마냐가 뭐베 로빈디 오고 로빈라 당원적인 누구 제배 최기 가준도 광 콜런디 데데부른 제리 히루게 진열라 원자를 원송 따로 제가 또 말을 제게 최 마와다 최 더바다라 내신 미스보다 나나 미스보다 나양 달라 최기 실도 미저데 타고는 최도는 예와던 귀신의 미교에 대해 치신 당원으로 송소 투드베스면에 말라면서 와다 진짜 쇼경은 조신 원에 미교 다저는 이버서 대바자와 세네다 신인이다 템베페 마데베 경사베도네 신인 땡거 타제 다 덴주 로베님이 삼네 추신도 템버 타제 다 추신도 때 될라이네 삼베텐주도 줘야 된주니 다 삼베텐주도 저 대바자와도 그리시고 저서는 그바자와 신의 대구자와 니소리 다 될로 통모 대바자와 사디레 그죠 달라를
сүлжгээр шүтэх гээд байгаа шүү дээ тийм ээ. Түрүүний ирсэн хэсэг дээр тэгэхээр энэ хоёрдугаар үндсэн сүлжгийг
So we are in this on page 80. It says in particular training in the faith, the root. And so having seen the benefits of relying on a guru and the disadvantage of not relying on a guru, and then also understood what if you make mistakes in your reliance on guru, then you actually come to feel that you must rely on a guru, and then having relied on a guru, started relying on a guru, you should also see how you should rely on the guru in the right way. And then next comes the reliance in one's thought and also in action. So within the thoughts, you have cultivating faith and respect.
대바 자원이 구조 따라를 송래 대바 공로마다 집에 저수 집에 와지면 독바스 이심이 추원을 줄 대바 델리 총지 순지 이면 대바니 보면 있으면 다 하지만 가지 보시면 그 회사 와이면 나도 다 가보죠. 라보시도 기주 자원이 이제 당을 최저와래 좀 대바 연중으로 대바 대바 소인데 be지는 대바미 대바 제송랑와 대바 마대바이 메다라 마가베스는 미제베서 메에서 올라오는 거 보시지는 오세지도 거네. 대바 연도 수지시 송소 조라 덤베 별로 공도 지바마고 예바라바 연도 제바전이 보면도 쉬베 쇼시네 메지지 중지 담제 라마라데네 겨와라. 케페 라마라 담베도 시네 메 가나게 송와다 조라 어디샤 담아 쇼시 깨지베쇼나 헤헤 콜라 나와다 상보도 되면 명아 자와 대바이 대바 송화들 대바신도 계셔 달라 질 군조다 렌제다 대신라 대바 망도 예게만 되네 라마라 대바 대 라마라 메시도 다와는 조왕 그 규례 상외다 뭐 로변라 라메시도 다와서 하시는 무슨 준대는 시도 다와신도 대니 대이스네 대다나 군도 개와지와주로 되는 지대에 달라 앞에 저 산제 제송라 태고시면도 그냥 담배도시 제가 보러 송신 누가 내정하다도 송고 요도 대다가 되니 제대로 산지에 보러 셰바나 뭐다가 좀 너무 조심해야 돼. 집으로 좀하다 올라마라 체도 제대로 또 만나봐도 좀 너무 심해야 또 왜 그냥 로정하고 대한 규제래 올라면 기능이 좀 저는 좀 미장에 손은 것도 보죠. 너무 그런 거 제에서 보다 제대로 남아야 돼. 셰쳐와 이양 대견 중세 예배는 내가 땅나라는 거를 지켜서 저 견셰체 야마 견예는 나마다 보다 이제 이거는 대바나 라는 거를 좀 그런 주로 대지라는 걸 남아 있는 견시주제 여행을 대응은 또왜 님이 삼로 본사만 도시에 가봐서 걔들 밤에 봐가면 이거 뭐서 지금 뒤 견도 좀 이제나 샤라만 배워서 저거 되는 심기도 좋은 주로 양 수준에서 망도 대박 뭐 대박라서 왜인데 이번은 르대 초송시 왜이래서 뭐 저거 되더라고 공부하나 견텐도 여버로 동양 르인데 초안진 왜 대박을 그러면도 되나 랑 문제be 쳐라 봐야 우에 봐 동양 봐 견도 로지가 왜인도 좀 로지인데 뭐도 뭐랑 양랑라 견우 동양 봐 랑게 인데 나래 동양 로쇼장 나 대견도 로스기는 뭐 신호 샹양 조치 뭐到我们真心 실링버 다와 섬섬 남된진베 다외고는 처음에 여기 뭐 되고 저 로제를 보셔도 신주기도 코너되는 이베 실링버 라마노지 저기에도면도 저보시노 연den경은 심신 균형은 다면에 뭐도 취재소 예요 취재지에서 뭐냐 봐 이제 뭐 개발하면 뭐라 자고 되고 저전에 라마때는 겨와 배신의 매개와 저로 또배 캠보特别중앙 시방 수준인데 뭐 수준 차와라 때배도 있게도 제대로 때발라 가와다 대바다 캠보라야 대바다 가와죠 로변 나마라 셔서다가 좀 주게 되면 저들은 주제서 아마도 뭐하면서 완전히 뭐 마마모만에 빠완주로님 가와다 랑바도 좀 개회셔라 버텨도 전부를 좀 매겨 원래 매주부를 줘도 셰당 특신이 시발래지 뭐 힘다게 되신 주산바 롱도 봐도 막하던 샤와 전도 니에 저보다 가지고 나가서 보다 가지고 나가서 나가서 보다 뭐 주고 선배 남이 소소 보다 되면 저기 집에서 저 소련이 뭐 롱는 뭐 랑베로 저라데 내셔기 그 저거 민세도 뭐 얘기 지니 집에 수서 저때 담바 되니 이게 개발 개디 로변 저라 요be 바당 예바당 꿀대당 저바 탐제지 루당 이고세 장 김다들 로변도 그거로 저거 뭐 많이나 최 많이 배고야 다시 몇시 송배 제로 수바 그리 저거지 다들 이제 샤 된다 하죠 수바 그리 제로 담바네 저 바레바 다유 또 거기 베셔라 초아 저바도 뭐 다유 또 디모게 디신 야다 다유는 또 주목이 주시면 이 로베 세제당 다 세베져서 나도 신변 진지 당다 라면버려 줘봐라 라면서부터 와서마다 세베져는 좀 저지당 다유는 원내지 냐마도 뭐다 다 되잖아 소베 메고도 동 그도 바로 쉬워지면 쉬리도 지게도 쉬워당 또 먹어 봐 레장 수는 어선 개신이 남아내면 당에서 사실을 뭐 최냐 최냐버니 또 뭐 라면 대화도 매도 뭐 그래서 뭐 Dobo, Tamje, Kembe, Tongi, Lama Dobo, Tibet, Too soon, Jimmy, she is the more power, so Jimmy, you go to war, give a shiny, dark, a the power of she is just what the Rajabaja, the temperature was the making Dajibas, London, give a sneaky and a Bailachede. Not all sick then, I was judging a lot the dog, turns you to Tamboy. Oh. Dongamala, Secretary Jaro, Dongama Lion, Secretary Jaro, Shan, Tomoko Le. Tomoko, Limited Dagashi, Shema, Cheno, Chugu Yande, also the just on the way, and the horse, what the Jibaraga model, Yande Homo, was making data. Never Nabado, Kashida, Jema, whatever, you must want. Tata Chola, Rude, how they just and do me too. Sometimes they also don't know was a tennis or something. Choose about Sanje, Sabo, Chanju, Jessie, what did I touch of Sanje, and I was shit. That gives me the also, didn't care about what they did. I just went down, the don't mean. Tendency in Guruche, Jason, but Tara, Sister, young Nozan, and double Guru. Now, Sabetin, Zawatabaja, the good resistance in the Kubacha, that in a Chevetin Julia, never so simple water. A question to a Cheven never Chivasa, that's all the shot. Good is bridge over the question to be Cheven never Chivasa, that's also the Lamecatria. You were joined in the Lamago, the Lamajan, many one. Tell them about it, don't go to
You should remember your teacher's kindness with these verses, using a melody and substituting yourself for Shuddhana. And next, so having relied on the teacher through your in your thought and your mind, then next comes how to rely in practice. So here, of course, in practice means making offerings and revering the Guru with gifts and so forth. But mainly it is the relying through your practice of or what the instructions that the teacher gives. So Ashwagosha's 50 verses on Guru says, what need is there to say much here? Do whatever pleases your gurus. Eliminate all that displeases them. Analyze this. Strive at it. Once you have understood Vajradhara's statements, attainments follow proper reliance on the master, unquote. Thoroughly please your gurus, in all things. In brief, you must strive to achieve what pleases your gurus and eliminate what displeases them. So the three avenues of achieving what pleases your gurus are offering material gifts, respecting and serving with body and speech, and practicing in accordance with their words. So this is also stated in the Maitreya's ornament for Mahayana Sutras. Rely on the teacher by way of respect, material things, his service and practice. Wenjans, Tata Junzilution, tell them Mikubata, Nyabata, Mamasu Char Mirume, Lamangujubale, Rigoyin, a minute of Sigis and Sheson Watar, Shazan Lepara, said the Mijuba, or the social. With respect to practicing in accordance with the Guru's words, on page 86, it says, Jerambuche raises a question first. The question says we must respect in accordance with the Guru's words. Then, what if we rely on the Gurus and they lead us to an incorrect path or employ us in activities that are contrary to the three vows? Should we do what they say? And then Rinpoche replies by saying, with respect to this Gunaprabha's sutra on this discipline states, if the abbot instructs you to do what is not in accord with the teachings, refuse. Also, the Cloud of Jewels Sutra says, with respect to virtue, act in accord with the Guru's words, but do not act in accord with the Guru's words with respect to the non-virtue. Therefore, you must not listen to non-virtuous instructions. The 12th birth story clearly gives the meaning of not engaging in what is improper. And so what this means is that if your Lama asks you to do something which is against the general structure of the teaching of the Buddha, then you should actually decline doing that. You should not accept to do those things that the teacher asks you. So with regard to the practicing according to Guru's words, it is said in the text, this means to practice without contradicting what the Guru instructs to you. This is most important, for as the garland of birth stories says, the worship that you should do in return for my help is to practice in accordance with my instructions. So with respect to how to rely on practice, just to read some part of this text. In brief, you must try to achieve what pleases your gurus and eliminate what displeases them. And then Guru Rinpoche goes on to say the 3 avenues of achieving what pleases your gurus are offering gifts, respecting, serving with body and speech, and practicing in accordance with the words. This is also stated in Maitreya's text. And then also a steadfast person who practices just as taught by the Guru pleases that Guru properly. And offering material gifts, the 50 verses of Guru says, if you always rely on your pledge master by giving things not normally given, your child, spouse, and your own life, what needs to speak of ephemeral resources? And also, offering to your pledge master constitutes continuous offering to all the Buddhas. Offering to them is the collection of merit. From the collections of merit and sublime wisdom comes the supreme attainments.
Tazar tembe sayang do de yen de je ko ga la je yen de shin ye ro de je so se me je so bo de jo la je ba je ko de provision gun go tembe shin yin do ko be ze me tembe bi ba na zo chang de jo bo de tembe shi ha an me za wa de ma ba tu me ba tembe chang na ro na mo de ba la ni ko je do je zi bo so de mo be kan sa la gong ba de ran ja che le je yang me ze wa de che sun je to me la 투라 다마다 저지 어디 푸르베 다인 소모 투지 zamando 때문에 보도에서는 나라다 개데 나라다 리존의 코르네 리존의 코르제도 로로잖아요 왜니리 Rambara Yun Ring do sing never to go by in so what or she would be paying. Saji Golania Wada Jana Jevada, Gavation Yemo, Wada Ramadan, Wada Languadon, Mumba Tobago, Mengish. Tell her Chambada Debe and they saw it in Jerusalem and they go to one you water. Tell her Nian with some Juro Gawato and Nemesion, Sharanshi to changing was all the one you water. I don't walk about that. Rigibo, and those someone in your room, Gavation Service. Gavation tea, Sambe, Gavation tea, Sambe, Shinju somebody. Somebody should do some better than give a measure to Gavation, you make a measure of someone on the measure, then Gavation and you could say, Shinju somebody on the job, and Meji, what a job, Gavation, giving a reservation to someone on. Let the young one of your Tubaka, Shedan, Zigibo, Gavation dishes with the Bola. Shinju Sambala, Sanje, Jumdan, then Namato, when you want your location, so that make a one of Sambala. Tamje, you want your location, you took the Tuzum about location, and you want your row. Gave Shini Yilla Shevatanga, Matawa, Lavata, Moto, Shevatanga, Sonja, Mijapa, Rigipo, Kadagation to Kubelo, Tembatanian, Batang, Onion Guru, Shawatana, gave it to Tube, Sambata, Gavatanga, Tele, Joake, or Juro. Tabale, Sambakavadanga, the leisure, one you rotate, give it, Jim, drove, give it, draw. Go or the water, liberty, messaging, give us a better, the version of the one Bichido. Tata Shen, Jes, also, Yamasa was everywhere among a bunch of Joseph. Lama attended the religious order, just watch all shares on so, Shen, Shini, Guveni. Nyanru nyo, Leana was in the yellow, no Chamazam, Middle, the new agent, the general is a one you what. Sajabada was a jigger, and I was a general mention to say the Versailles, but the days of when they gave a show about the Meva. Nyanru Chamber and you will learn, and was sent this laws of Mugila, so do it, and a similar never show the best I want you to Tana. Yaga, Middle of Janga, one euro days, nature, bottom, about the Macavas, what you was about. Labo Song, the version one among other jiggers, the Walamala Niguja, the Sunjamika, the Mo Shedan. Sanjay Yiba and then number two about the Janga Diligent, Tena Sajala Chawa, Lama, Tamba, Tanganiamba, Tankudish, or Jes, gave a legend. The modern the Sue Young Vicente, two is in Yimika, then what is about the Langanate, and the division of Mago, Parayan. Curve and Jerusalem also, Potovation, and Ogo, Pado, Lulu, Junior. Lulu don't the Lulu Puma. Jaro Setum Mijero was to give need to be the Migo, Paris, or you are going away. Tamshe do you, Jimmy Songo, Lama, Nava Madame, Benny, machine to send a bit of Lona. Tamata was a matter, that tends to log me. Chinian do a bit to Lona, send it in there, down to me, there was a Mangalu. To me about do about Melbourne, you the Lana, those you won't go in the counter. Lomula, never you were talking about the one which is the one of the Jagaza, one just measuring that the way you take a worship. Some of the boys, you show what I say about you, some of those about Yavatan Asia, what and as then they gave about tires or the dog and all the Bogoton and Yamisha on the junk. Loving what the way of down said on and on the Motel, don't know you much, and show you the job of the Tenda Lord and Namja, Senes, and Jania, one door, Nam, and you could do some to just make it always and you're not young, and never saw you. None may last on you, when you're the Bakan, then never a young Dash and Kidu Jumbo. Shindy. The Tanaka country to Tawada, citizen Yabala, and number of he and Jagan, message and to join your shares also. Shanya, Yanda, Majibana, Major, and Jangan, and wrote that Tata, yes, I am repeating and then they tell another sim some town or Dana Sim again, and I had all on the revolution again. I had there was some Gazada, a church, the Began, all the Cuba, the Lama, or the Vendushim began at the Mato. Tada Matoba, Toba Chim is a one name, the Magubin, a chair, no one gives your wishes on what Taro. Migi Vishin, Dictro young, then you know, Kagi in division, you were the Japan, Medubata, the Wajiv, Nabatam, Ponce, the Tabanya, Shawale, the Shadang, Shadan, Dimotoji, Shirikivani, Tigvitote, Tenny, Tugi, the water was and the Valaya. Chanju Samba, never talking about the Ziquata, language, about the one in the Louis, I mean, Gavada, some number of Dawa, Nigaji, or Jedo, Yang Tini, Shay, Luzon. 这一类就我们讲说就我们就把它讲，我就是那个样从我他妈的不就来，然后讲到地主主义什么人什么给那些因为都能帮吧，能帮吧，这到他们是工作退休那么就嘛帮没养生起来东西当是吧当咋这些种的吧都没进中吧的。诸多嘛当这么这么改变些不能没这的地震没当那么这的我怎么没什么那么我多些没嘛不但是嘛也但没的军就同步了苦同步了土大就个同步个这些种的没给看了这那让现在这边可能没原因就俺也把那么的俺没把那啥都就往南说 其实这边现在他就找什么当中讲真的没听，这我今嘛他那他忙着我了，前面说我做那个真多问题，但是呢，那边的就是用说差呗，当不样，俺那些把那个如果退休怎么讲呗，你们看样没见你都那去就现在呢，马老这边现在当不了。 军人都等过了，第一次样，七个月现在那么等到上那帮到有时候，但是等着马些或者在那里。 看没准把它讲究没新业特别小光景，那么你们看了一下该是我等于你们早的那位，肉里面是怎么有什么过程呢？当然他们考了有可行，送了就成了是不？他们那就送至即将见的见呢，各地方见过的现在是吧？是我跟用心度，我跟用心度，然后。 那么就是没戏性，写一讲啊，没戏，或者土木的圈，你把那么这边看到。
In a bad caste. Furthermore, good qualities that have not yet developed will not develop, and those that have been developed will degenerate and then disappear. Moreover, if you rely on non-virtuous teachers and bad friends, your good qualities will slowly diminish and all of your faults will increase. Then everything that is unwanted will develop, therefore always avoid them. And then by relying on non-virtuous teachers, you previously exist in wrongdoings. Deeds wrong by nature and deeds wrong by prohibition does not diminish and new wrongdoings increase. Dom Tempa said, the worst person, though keeping good company, does not become better than middling. The best, when keeping company with the worst, readily becomes part of the worst. A summary of the meaning of previous 5 parts. Thus, you must also understand, as explained above, the instructions that are renowned as Guru Yoga. Yet, you will get nowhere by training in an object of meditation for just a single session. When you practice a teaching from the heart, you must rely on a long time. An excellent teacher.
미 교사도 저 소지식을 제한하니 지금요 된적이 차네 이네 내 장모총의 야고야리 아니 소소 최적의 차네 있나야 장모총은 야고야리 된적인도 내가 시도 잘라서 아니 구승투지 때 잡아 스타디 구승투지 때 양쪽 소소 예배지 된데 이네 되더마 샴마장 디 구림디 점루디 지 주상화다 그 공 님们전에 배 공체로 저做了下 지现在这样被想到嘛下说真的没办法다 담배다고 좀 된데做了 균진벌이想不있는다 다네 담배다고 좀 된데做了 다 되네 지 루루에서서 장장서 와시도 저태대 주체 엔다 저기라마 된지는 저거라요 저태체 엔다 간다 라마 做了下 다 되네 이담 되네 이네 취소 에네 어디서 대마도 스타 라마치베나라 이네 벤도 죽지신다 소용도가 어디나 진행이 다 되면에 다 간다지 이게 소지신 어디서 여인도 그게 무슨 소리 땐잠다디 그지 맞아 하지 야고 진짜 봐 되는 처바 염에 버자라 사다디 처바 처바 쪼도 들으셔버리셔 소스 냠네 야고체 된리기다 수 냠는 제베니 계자디디 최세수야 아니 둘네 아니 지 표야로 다 때문에 아까다 미국에 맞잖아요 가도 소소 후다 받았잖아 저 제베 처바들이 라마 제베 처바들이 나 캐션 두베 처바들이셔 아니 다 대다가 지 게로 다 들려야니 지 치다 처바 저저디 두 위험해 잘라서 다 열려야 아니 그런거요 규요 두 로스를 내셔도 저디 먼저지 그런거요 수전에 다섬 지금 디진지는 최제가 와는 진짜 다 차고로지다 지금 된대그 타네 미 통하는 지금 저야 서로 지금 된대그 타네 심이나 야 망고진의 규도 시하고 보다 소소지 이거 무슨 소리 드셔도 규도 시로 샤제 그 규도 시샤네 양 공부를 주는 이네 구수 종기 제제로서 시르잖니다 시라랑 소도야 말이 진짜 매지 봐 저요 저로 그면서셔 에네 단도로 륜두루 자담 저런 강들 쾌네스 계속 쳐버지는 거네스 에네 내가 give 세도야 다 라마 땡아 세들이 남주다 라마 땡아 때문에도 좀 된데 유저라지 아드네 야리야 잡아먹고 야 다시 주주라면 거 연리야 지수 잡아야 서무도 주라면 거네요 늘을 천정 것도 될라마 자라마 조쇼니 천정 것도 될라면 거네요 겨로 도시 상라 아니 규디 다 르규디스 제디 여대와 다 된대지 아니 고미하고 디 발려야 아니 지 양 교육시라든지 세더라 연에 전에도 라마 땡아세들이 다 된지 교육세다 양 인지미집에 교육 남자 먹고게 뭐주네 다 소스 몇 때마다고 또 좀 된대 딘디는 소스 아니 다 직전적인 거 소리 라마 디세 너트는 다른 저거다 도세 아니 소신산 가서디 교육세다 다 되네 잠도치야 다 잠도 가서 공들어보는 시리 산지 초송을 때문에나 산지세야디 아니 참으로 기본 로나 편셔고 또 뜻이 좀 선송샤 되게 돈다더마 저로로 샤워체체 다 된게 타네 다다 지금 좀 되게 다 무슨 도구 연대 다 조조데 비르샤 그전에 농자들이 지금 지금 던지도 기록부시는 던지도 나가다 책디 전시생의 레송과 최지소로 벌어 그거도 저도 뭐시 저기 최전하로래 강시 꾸는 뭐 단정신 관련한 저와 장소 전시 덤바달로 찾는 중앙주의 대주로 셔셔하더니 나 송송이야래 다이네 강시 꾸는 뭐 단정사 멤버 공연은 뭐 송다디디 우마비중의 송셔회 다 멤버 디리 뭐 신고 벌었다 자자가 저랑에 진유모지는 유모지 뭐 이비 미시면 버스는 송셔왔다데 지분 건조 되게 요래 다 가다 드릴 거네 다 조조한테 드리샤 전시승을 내서 최지소로 말로 그거를 저는 니군 사와 도시로 사다 시소송나 신신의 된저기도 안에 거로 삼으시다 나 들려디도가 중도자에 나래야 아니 딱대 신유 중국 친한이 세네 딱도 따에 신유 다 지금 정저로 된저기로 현지기다 지금 신대야 지금 여다버티 더동 따르다네 아니 중대 아니 다 풍불을 된 샹도 열사로 야나 다디니 나버시버 풍불에는 소 남시 풍불샤네 다디니 다 센실샤네 왕 그렇게 야 지금 장저로 지다 좀더 다는 용도가 다도 급수보다 치료를 좀더 시켜야 돼 풍불을 된 샹도 다 돼야 되기 나 딱다 땡도 땡겨 현지가 다 예배 타올라 아니 더동 봐 땜을 동야리야 아니 풍불을 된 샹도 다 열을 수도 되게 걸어 자상가 현재 참을로게 거슬러버는 시리 풍불의 전시에 다 되게도가 다 랑데 다 풍불의 때에 다 뭐도 풍불의 전시에 다 면되어 봐 자상가 된데 인도 닥대 신유 고버디 모티브 좀다. 닥대 말이 닥대 신유 고버디 산지베 좀다. 닥대 신유 주버디 아니 최근에 지유도 주베 좀더 마우스다 좀더 세네. 닥대 신유 중고 아니 지난 거 좀더니 넘쳐 보실 수도 같아. 저 되는 일은 다 되게 막 걸어 상담하이나 아니 담배 개발 티 담배 아니 조조 아니 가사 지면 담배 능주신에 담발라 이진이에 따도 강을 쇼송샤데 제 이름이 저번에 내가 최송에게 담바 아니 산지 좀 된대요리 아니 지부에 담바 마비라요리 다가는 지 장점에 담바요리 아니 가져다 가져라는 시리다 모티베이션 뭐 대중세 중세 라데네 모디즈노는 다들 요소 원하신 거다 모티브도 보면 것도가 아니 이슈다 봐요 야래 이슈 뭐실까 아니 이슈다 말에 다가는 시 모하메드 아니 가졌단 말에 다 소소소다 담바면 먹고도가 다 담바되게 제소장에 배견에 배자치 몸이 야래 나발에 간다 망하를 시리 이슈 증에니 다 동주직 클래스 가지 배치 동주직 클래스 다 나와 또 동주주래 하다 다른 사람이 노르셔서야 빌리언 살 초고다 빌리언다 동주 10주로데 전에 와다 동주 가서 이슈증에 동주주 클래스 가지 동주주 클래스 다 산제보다 동주주 유명시해 아니 힌두 동주주 유명시해 다 먹고서도 와 아야 다 사강 지글 차셔버리나 남을 나가서 죽으래 이슈 나간다 가지 나간다도 할래봐도 진짜지 사실이 이제는 출루라는 다 덤버 시라도 왔다 사실이 이제는 다 덤베 캐버디 꾸이직 제유가 나베더니 시작해 왔다 조조디 덤버트디 댄샤베 숭데 간다시도 왔다 심주 차려도 심주 제유도 왔다 되게 쉬었더니 좀 되게 송셔버디 에네 다음에 따와 세도 송인도 전에 동해에서 녀몽 조 아니 녀몽 독송 대자와 띠무 댄진 다 뒤임버디 우면숑네 다 고물로 간다 송샤다 세셔래 다 뒤도 아직 상으로 거인도 애는 거냐 전에 강신 스시 송어 이천도 벌라나 자와 댄진도 버죠 스신도 버텔란데 지금 그거 전에 대자와 머리도 강신 통한테도 댄진도 버죠 다 시소송은 난시게 내 지금 타네 애는 담발이야 뭐냐 전에게 다 담바 잔잔한 담바 쳐도 하고 임버지 다 통토야지 용으로 봐 그래서 잠도 용어래야 다 디디 야고 심몇 권에 관마듯이 지 때문에 지여다 저기 데뷔세트 봤잖다 가지서 데뷔 믹스세트 했으면 왔다 메칼리아 칼로아치 차사하셔도 되겠는데 네 이슈 쳐봐서 메라가 나로리아 지금 메리 아니 지스 크라이스트 신주지 남시 버는데 야는 지스 크라이스트 디 땡신가를 쇼쇼부터 되신다 그냥 굿 여러다 나들이도 와 자상가다 드르지기다 주로 삼으러 요래 딱 가다 캐버디 아니 tension 봐 송샤다 어디 자자토요는 서버성과를 로면 삼에 송도 가지쳐서 샤샤네 뭐냐 전에게 가지쳐봐 이뭐얘는 밀리아 차와차서 미룬 거지 가지 냠려면 주시기도 가 다른 신기다 이슈 뜻이지 저번에 네가 그 페이지 미질이야 신연의 트레이딩의 되게 돌아 삼지 중에 나보다 이슈를 하래 다 이슈 취해야지 지거를 마도 생거는 전에 다 사자 고교 믿고 가봐 여서대 아니 이슈 취해봤던 적이 지금 맨주가 러시아서로 지금 랍더소야서 쉽지도 만나서 나봐 에다나 디나나 나베킨도서 도가나로리아 아니 가식스 지지로 셔셔베서 우르 셔셔도 될수 있거다 서티드 가식 세시기 이슈 쳐봐서 랍더소기 망가 좀 쉽지도 낭배 쳐봐서 되지 야 비워다 샵도 렌체 쇼모도 개민나게 비도 쓰기도 와. 그거에 대해서 와다 되 시기도 와. 자들이 이르사대 거더라 다 단단한 상담 또 심부인. 당연히 다 상주들이 나의 디지 힌두 그 조부치 그런 철 대바시라요. 항상 남다가 말이야. 니무지 디디지. 아니 전부리디 군조 꺼버리스. 다 군조 꺼베. 아니 전부리디 간리야. 미 독자 먹고 싶어도 아니 군조 가르치는 꺼버렸어. 아니 나디 렌스다 자즈김도가. 다디 군조 내가 냐와 꺼버리스. 서유 꺼버려. 냐와 꺼버리스. 냐와 꺼스도서는 냐와 drogen스 꺼버리스. 제사가 이제 미tuk자 주체 용기 어르신한테 도스 라위다. 근두도 와. 젊으신 어른 심 따고 땅 어른 심 거대. 애니 친하게 개바디르만 숨네. 뉴뉴뉴뉴래. 뭐는 저는 딩어른 심은 다 타주뉴고 거대 찍어 봤다. 타주뉴고 거대 여보다 어른 심은 우리만 배지 야리다 샤리 배지. 주장시 아유. 뉴뉴로. 뒤지 여기는 가자요다. 애니 집어도 낭배 개발되듯이 다 개발 순주잖아요. 사과 면자리 철로 면자서 뒤면에 어다 떠주부터는 면자요 뒤르마다 송도가 뉴뉴 송이 다 낭배 제주도 어디 다음에 다가 송도가 쉽게 롱창네 상계 기송 꼭주주 강시 특송 견주와 대유 동반 이된데 니니 코너 이지자 세송샤 달로 수르네베도는 조고도 아니 할래 표정으로 지나려 하다디 다는 상계 처음이지. 세계소라 미다야 강시 일본 대배지 뒤니 더블 용순진스. 나 상계배 초치메스. 상계배를 셴배 출루신다는 거 당외 가게 메스. 근데 이 상계배 아니 군조의 수다 군조식으로다 상계배 군조의 덤배 송셔버때다. 아니 출루 생기 있는 덤배 송셔배 최니부터 도르윤도잖아. 아니 만라시도스. 전디 송도가 사들이 이두산에 어떤 거라서 가다가라서 저디싱기베 아주 사사들이 그래 유튜브 따짜스 심으베 저는 마시는데 상월에 속고 마시는 여거다 아직 개월에 유야니 사디 유 두르이나 아니 유야니의 싱그리스 유튜브스 지난주 속부터 따라가고 싶어요. 다 야니디 다 짜니. 다 작고도 슬레베 핑거 말이다. 전부도 슬레베 핑거 말이. 다저당 아니 가서 다 쫓아려네. 있는 거는 전에 다 그게 야가 유명한 싱그리스. 듣는시 산지 다그 최 먹고 싶어요. 다 디디 유튜브 다 짜슬러버네시 또 누르체 심주체네. 아니 강을 좀제 망 유대버디 아니 캬나 강라 균제 gendu yebati ene 당념을 샤 저소 자들이 인도도 철이 접수 들어와서다 조들도 왔어 산절 접수 들어와서야 조조 철 딱세션 좀전에 그런 거 송셔에 최대로 딱세션이 되네네 산지 좀 된데 담아다잖아네 맨자리샤 사바지 로치아스도 저름치기 대적강 그 코너에 철을 찌질 크민 유스 송셔다 되리 자산가 동리가 나와서 시오지가 좀 잠들 거들이네 동리가 나와래 민중 거들에 동리가 나와래 정중성 거들에 동리가 나와래 다 동리가 나와셔 이르잖아 얘는 공부를 뭐나 전에 그런 좀 인데 저기 얘는 산재장다 얘는 나와 잡아도 시원하다 이런 거는 전에다 개변나게 양재 안 뒤지 그 광주 맞아야 돼 젊으시야 통문이 부지르셔 벽강젤이야 개변공부도 다 중요해 삼점이 개발해 당연한 것도 별이야 자야 넘숨세네 아니 자 군지 롱점바 자 되네 사벤지다 되네 저무시 디수부들라 자야 넘숨세 쇼도가 오늘 전에 개발해 버려 당신은 누가 저 가냐면 된대 하고 쇼데 진행군라 군지 로자와 로저 카드라 양배 란다와 용서 담방가도 정가와 총매 넘어서지 뜻이셔서 그러더만 지체네 개보면 쉬우청이야래 오늘 전에 다가는 신게 주회께서 먹고 쉬우청이야래 리디 이내 땡진 저번 좀 듣고는 루루 옆에서 공부 능신 숭망부 공직니 제도 할 레벨 14고 나셔야 돼. 배시 저런 지동마다 메도가. 자 뒤치기 맨날 개별 공부 주 미번기에 아니 저런 지 때문에 나리야. 저런 지 있는 땡중 그 듣고는 다 배상한 자견선이 저런 지를 때문에 고디 땡중 그땀 상한 자가 되가네. 때문에 자도가. 진짜로지. 사진이 있는잖아요. 어다 때문에 은수신의 때문에 진입에 다도 강쇼 송샤다 진짜리샤. 어딘지 그거나다 잠주체야. 다 잠주 생근하네. 잠주 가서 우리 뛰었은 줘야. 나도 균센데서 로리야 지샤. 된지지가 타네. 땅만에 자네. 응원도 줘야 이내리. 내리 줘야. 더도 탐지팀 뵙고 반 줘야. 다 뒤에 다음에 따와든지 송시에다 주주디 다 싸울 tuktem디 셴바이나 아니 그게 잠주 닌지메데베다 잠주지 용으로 봐다 어딘지 로스니메베다 잠주 세시고지다 용돼야 되리 대대벽고나다 떼순 좋아 아니 책다 제주 가전에 책임도 송고르네 시고도네 내려면다 가서도네 책임도 내가 자면 저거지 당연히 망치겠다 저래 줄고 그냥 저도 차선 줄고 말해 니부 준들이 자면 저거들이 가들려 그래 아잘하지 몰라지 이제 줄지 싶어 인사 아니 근데 라마 저 소신 통보자도가 산제의 상황만 샤샤스 당을 이듬다 라마도 뒤에 공을 사는 그래 내가 나와치면 수사 뒤 나보다 그 말이 이들 준제도 왔다 땜배다 못도 뭐 준데 소치고 그러다 봐 이디 진짜 뒤에 아블라 되서 럽요 서 뒤에 인도산에다 간다 땜배다 못도 뭐 준데 다디 야고 가서 그래 뒤 구순 다 조송연된 뒤에 야고 싶어체 인 뒤터네 인 뒤툴이야 다른 가지고 뒤된다 된다 년도선 그 가자 저는 강다 양다 내배 통남 나버근데 나서 디숭바 사다데도가 좀 된대겠다 주문제 시동체는 송셔가 뒤로 송유잖아요 아니 뭐나 전에다 당화지야지 용거로 왔다 너다 대대별관에 그게 미국 사다에 좀 된데 지고 삼다는 야고도 좀 된데 제 아니 디 루루체 토미체 아니 참장 사다는 야고래 아니 된데 젊으식 사다 아니 계시자 라마서 세다 단 라마 세다 저 라마 세다는 아니 젊으신 뒤인데 아니 야서 숨제 뒤인데 아니 수수자 라마 세다나 아니 소신 뭔가 쉬고 하면 도가 봐. 너 도시에 딱 근데 교육 뉴뉴지 세다 아니 잠도때 안테네 다 떼순도야 엄마한테 대결을 떼순도야 돼 대결을 떼순도잖아 düne yebe temne luobe ba tingi ji 고방 구순투 연대 치머진진 안한게 뭔도 자 사바지 떼순 거고요. 대결을 떼순 해야 돼. 봐. 이게 떼윤 dü는샤 땅에 기도를 해서 뭐 천하게 캔슬러나 교적 좀 도다르도가 나 천하게 연대는 신직이 땅 안한게 뭔도 전에 천하게 툭제버는 신에 셈게 결한게 자가에 줘발을 넣는 신 안한게 자가에 줘발을 넣니 가다 타예에 심지 타다게다 전시 쭉 사버지기 지신 난간 내봤던 로가 지신 내주고 지지도 안 내주는 러동에서 오셔서야게 셈들이시게 있는 다 셈기셔야 돼 버리 죄송아 잠도 셈기 와다 대대벽관에 교선 로한테 셈기가 규전 제게 버지 자 당연히 주주 주었으면 그냥 집어다 가주쇼 죄송아 가오정아 바라샤 디르데 되게 러셔디 로자 삼는 아디파 지르죠
So His Holiness, after having said all these, then says now we'll have a break for 15 minutes, and perhaps in the meantime, the interpreters should also be able to forget what has been said.
Well, exactly. That's what I was afraid of.
사서 먹어지, 사서 먹어지.
энд нэг ийм асуулт ирсэн байна. Монголд сүүлийн жилүүдэд айл болгон одоо энтгэхээс юм хаанаас за ямар ч үсэн бомб аваад одоо бид нар бомб мэдээж шүү дээ. Монгорын бомб гэдэг шүү дээ тийм ээ. Тийм бомб одоо гэртээ.
So basically we are on this section on page 94 which says what to do during the actual meditation session.
Тэр орон одоо баяждаг тийм ээ. Эд баялаг одоо хэлбэг байдаг гэдэг ийм утгаараа яг бомб шүтээд байдаг. Бараг л одоо худлаа ярьдаг хүнд бол айл
Impossible.
Гэтэл одоо юу гэдэг нь улс орны эдийн засаг улам удаад өр ширэнд баригдаад ингээд идэг энэ ер нь яг ямар учиртай юм бэ? Энийн талаар нэг та тайлбарж өгөөч гэсэн нэг ийм асуулт хүн өргүүлсэн байна.
Нэг нам юзэмзэн ишэдэг. 아주 배배 다 배버즈 다 장소부터 지고래 지금 영주체야 지금 되게 놀라 잠만도 써야 되는데 제대로 해야 돼. 뭐 주야 시작이 해야 돼. 이내 배배기를 밀리니에 지에미도가 유럽도 아메리카도 다 부모 주야 야 말이 봐. 놀라 야 말이 이 밀리니에 빌리니에도가
шоглоомор ярьдаг. Манай төвд ч гэсэн яг бомб шүтээ тэгээ баяжин болоод бомб шүтээ. Гэтэл өнөө үед манай төвдөөс
So the question must have His Holiness just gave a response to the first question which was asked, and basically what was said was that amongst the Tibetans and Mongolians, and of course we have the practice called actually a ritual for there's some kind of a wealth pot that we keep in our house, and after having been after the rituals were done for wealth, then things were put in some wealth pot, and this is kept in our houses. But there are not even a single millionaire amongst Tibetans and Mongolians.
라마를 찌지고 대박거래 가시도 주고래스 이내 최도 밑에는 되게 말했습니다. 배 점심 여 심생도 와 듣는신 대 놀라 야래 놀라 좀니 양고 거바다 편도든지 영야야 레디네 배 놀래 놀대그레스 찌지고 양 탈흥신 야고야 말해 저 소소 가래져고래.
So by saying this, I'm not saying that these wealth deities are not there at all. Of course the deities are there who can help us gain wealth and so forth. But what we must not do is not just relying on these wealth gods for our wealth and not do anything from our side. We must also, while we pray to these wealth gods, we should also put effort. We should work hard on our part so that we'll be able to actually fulfill our goal of gaining wealth.
The Mongolians have a beautiful chanting.
Тэгэхээр өөрөөсөө ажил хөдөлмөрөө сайн хийгээд хичээл зүтгэлээ сайн гаргах юм бол тэрний хажуугаар одоо яг дэмжлэг бол маягаар байна. Тэрийг бид нар сайн ойлгох хэрэгтэй. Ийм маягаар бид нар яг энийг өөрсдөө одоо
Should I say?
Бомб байхгүй бол баяжгүй, бомб шүтгэхгүй, бомб гэртээ залахгүй бол одоо юу гэдэг байсан юм байхгүй болчоод улам одоо их олохыг хүсээд тэр нь их болохгүй ч юм.
They hear you.
Хамгийн гол нь бол хувь хүний өөрийн хичээл зүтгэлээс хамааралтай зүйл шүү дээ энэ чинь.
그래.
People are listening or not? I'm very impatient.
ном уншаад гүрэм засал хийгээд ингээд яваад байгаа. Тэгээд энэ тал дээр одоо юу гэдэг нь далаа өвшин зүгээс тэр улсуудад номын үйл ажиллагаа явуулах одоо яг одоо энэ бодмөрийн зэргийг тайлбарладаг ч юм уу те шашны ойлголтыг хүнд одоо ингээд түгээх ойлгуулах ийм ажил тал дээр нь одоо ямар анхаарал тавьмаар байна таны зүгээс анхаарах боломж байна уу?
We're in the question and answer session right now, and then the second question was asked to His Holiness. Now the response is His Holiness says he cannot do much about that. Should have interest in studying the Dharma.
ngema lama chik pebe lama chenpo chik chungre and chi ye midne
And some foreigners visited one Lama, and the Lama told him to sit down because I have lots of time today. And then the foreigner, one of the foreigners asked, the Westerners asked, what are the five-fold path and the 10 bodhisattva grounds? And immediately the Lama's response was, oh, I'm in a hurry now. So you actually have to request these teachers to give teachings, and for a short text, you should ask, for example, teaching on the Heart Sutra.
Oh, so you la labor medasi sungkwa chuni yagor waide. Right. Kudu kukomai so you le penny so you le mi lusu gor de doga. 공부를 단지 주제 필요 전에 남서 탐자샤고도 고고모르니 탐자슈 아니 소고 딱세단 저 디숭기연다 터주르부치 고모님도 도가 제사가 드드 로셀링기 디저레 캠부치 쇼로셀링 캠부 나면도 시기시지 고모님도 여자 선터주지 가도 송을 쉬고 디 고고면데 안데 로셀링 기시디 니부샤요레스 인슈 캠복 리콘에 남아 있는 땡이야 세워야 참아서 근데 저거 군도 구매 간다 스고시고 샤야래 산타주르시 우푸기 부기 가소뇨 미게 소유를 페베걸 탐제샤번 걸이야 다서 꾸니부 중원면 로스 다다 계실라티 투베스부시라 좋아라스 수구요 빼야고로다 디고로
So the second, so during the 13th Dalai Lama's time, there was he visited Mongolia, and at that time, His Holiness the 13th Dalai Lama actually sat down for debate, and where he actually took the role of the answering the questions. And so during that time, Lobsang Rinpoche was also there amongst his entourage. And so during the debate, one of the geshes who had who was from Losaling Monastery actually started the questioning the 13th Dalai Lama. And therefore, because this geshe was a good scholar, later on Lobsang Rinpoche has told me that the 13th Dalai Lama was really pleased with this geshe who put questions to him and gave challenges to him during that debate session. And Lobsang Rinpoche said that perhaps at that time when he was sitting to give answers and the challenges were put by this geshe, perhaps the 13th Dalai Lama was somehow put in a difficult position by this geshe, and therefore he was he found the geshe to be very helpful to him to gain more deeper understanding of the text and so forth. So because of that, perhaps the 13th Dalai Lama became very pleased with this geshe. And so His Holiness was saying that when it comes to when Tibetans monks come to Mongolia, the Mongolians should ask to give teachings. For example, they can choose texts like Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental middle way verses of the middle way by Nagarjuna, or Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara, entering the middle way. Request teachings on these texts, for example, or other teachings like a shorter text like the Heart Sutra, and then see whether they can actually give teachings or not. And then you can see the whether those the monks who come to you in Mongolia are qualified teachers or not. You should be able to check them by asking them to give teachings like that. And then later on, they would, after coming back to India, they would have to rethink whether to go back to Mongolia or not, because they would, because you give them hard time asking for teachings of these tough texts, and they are not able to do them. They would not be so excited to go to Mongolia. And so in this way, you have to check these people who come to Mongolia.
렌 태보다 야구추는 벽에 대보시라 대. 딱서도 카오르세도 이니 쏴게 되지. 네 국민도 세상에 열다디.
And so Geshe Solomon is saying that some Mongolian Geshes were quite cunning. What happened was sometimes when the Tibetans put questions, and the Mongolian Geshes could actually understand the answer, know the answers. I mean, they were able to give the answers. They would really speak in good Tibetan. But when the question becomes a little bit tough for them to really give good answers, then they would pretend not to have understood the Tibetan question in Tibetan, and say that they didn't really understand them. And so Ngodrup Chongye, who was one of the debate assistants to His Holiness in his childhood, had told him the story that one Mongolian was actually put to a difficult position during a debate session. And then what he said, because he was not able to give the answer well, he said that, of course, I cannot actually put them in words, although I know them in my heart.
믿음아.
Who is able to overcome all obstacles and all evil forces. And you are the crowning jewel of the scholars of the land of snow, Tibet, Tsongkhapa, Lobsang Thakpa. I call on you, or I pray to you. Call it. Power Khazito. Nishtani Dorsh. And the sun, daughter. Page 94 in the text, which says what to do during the actual meditation session. The actual meditation session.
Zamjugudu mismo shigo tungyusudu. Zamjugudu ngagodu tre ngagore shayande. Right? Mismo shigo luzane mismo de tunyo mo kanje kebu losana verso desadre. Ngago suzane dumo juzo saada sadna betevre. Ta mismo kugo tenma tiganna bejonra do가야. So 당구 미즈모디 시고들이셔. 대야 아니 렌다바다 젊으치 투무무이베다 저거 여다버지기. 전에 이는 렌다발이야 젊으치가 파때 번자래. 미미스에 지전에 주미지 먹고 좀 간제 개별 조직 란다바 신호를 셔로 소한데스 근데 란다베 디시니 다디 제무지 코란을 쏘가발로 파외버도스 제가 미미스에 지전 주미지 먹고 좀 간제 개별 조직 쏘가바 로산다베 셔로 소한데스 초우산 자외 말이 제가 당부 미스무디 시고들이셔 다디 시고 이냐 다디 르송 공부 상나 야고도스 이는 두고를 좀 사나다 사데 그들은 왜 저래 그런 친구배 두고를 좀 사나다 사데 수는 왜 저래 미스무 당고도 시고지 숨이 왜 친구이 왜 너와 됐나 숨이 되가 좀 맞잖아 para doas을 인디 중하다 되게 다 가서다 너지 대부분 사진 야 미스무 전에 미스무 시고도 말해 시고를 나고들래 가 먼저 시고들 봐 싫어 너 배시 다 가르쳐 내가 소소 gel이야 미스무 나고졌네 야고로 사운드 버체 아니 젊지 굴리아 주 dimba 닝거리아 아니 르송고 뭐 세트니 도시아야리 그래서 니들은 거기서 나고도 야고도가 다 당근 중부자위는 무슨 시고다 알아르죠. 봐.
So with regard to this, the prayer of Master Tsongkhapa, which was recited, sometimes it seems that Mongolians, His Holiness was saying that sometimes the Mongolians were reciting the 4-line prayer of the Tsongkhapa, or sometimes, and then other times they seem to be reciting the 5-line prayer of this this prayer of Tsongkhapa. But in any case, in the beginning, initially how it started was that Rinpoche, that Master Tsongkhapa himself actually wrote this prayer in praise of his own teacher, Jitun Rendawa, and he in this prayer to Jitun Rendawa, Rinpoche wrote, "You who is the treasury, who are the treasury of the of non-objectifying compassion, and who has the the Avalokiteshvara, and you Manjushri, who is of the flawless knowledge." And then Rendawa, the crowning jewel of the scholars of the land of snows, to you I make my supplication. So this was what Rinpoche initially wrote, but then Jitun Rendawa, after hearing this praise, said that actually this praise actually befits you. Therefore, he actually turned it over and changed Rendawa, his name, to Tsongkhapa, and then gave this prayer back, or praise back, to Tsongkhapa himself. And so it was only 4-line prayer in the beginning, whereas at some point now, because His Holiness was trying to ask if anybody knew whoever had inserted this 4th line, which says you are Vajrapani, who overcomes all called evil forces. Whoever has inserted this line, His Holiness was trying to ask if anybody knew the source, and since nobody had any answer, His Holiness says, in that case, I might say at some point of time in our history, somebody inserted this line and made this prayer a 5-line prayer. So, and then of course, in Drepung Monastery, when they recite this prayer, they use the 4-line prayer, and then when you actually personally do your practice of based on Tsongkhapa as the guru for your Guru Yoga practice, what you can do is you can imagine these 3 deities who are called the 3 deities of the 3 lineages, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, and Vajrapani. And so these 3 deities could be imagined on Rinpoche Tsongkhapa's crown, throat and heart, and then you can say the prayer, 5-line prayer as well. And so this is about this prayer of the 5-line prayer or 4-line prayer of Tsongkhapa. And now I'll try to remember, looking at the notes, what His Holiness had said earlier. Now we are at that a part of the teaching, which says the actual meditation session is divided into 3 phases: the preparation, the actual session, and the conclusion. Now we are at the preparation, and within this there is the cleaning. The 6 aspects of the preparation are the activities of settling pa. Therefore, number one, clean well the place where you are staying and neatly arrange the representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And so, with regard to this, why do we do this kind of practice of cleaning the room and arranging the Buddha statues, the representations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cleanly and neatly and so forth? Is on the one hand, when we do this kind of, when we do these our practices also pleases and delights the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And secondly, it also has health benefit. And so, keeping your room clean and is hygienic for yourself as well, and therefore you should do this. And then when it comes to number 2, obtain offerings without deceit and arrange them beautifully. Now here, sometimes we tend to think of the material. We tend to pay importance to the kind of material from which these statues and so forth are made, and also the offerings that we made. Now here, what we have to think is when we arrange the Buddhas, so with regard to the number 1, sometimes we consider those Buddha statues and Bodhisattvas, statues of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or representations of them, which are made of more precious metals and precious stones and so forth, to be holier than others. So that should not be the case. What we have to consider most important is the Buddha. Buddha is our main object of refuge, and then we should also have the whether they are made of, whatever materials they are made of. We should have the Buddha statue first, and then around the Buddha statue we have to arrange masters like Nagarjuna and so forth, or deity, Bodhisattva deities like Manjushri, Maitreya, and so forth. And so within this practice of Guru Yoga now, the Lama becomes the principal object for our refuge. And then the Lama, of course, after the Lama comes deities, and then last comes the Dharma protectors. So in the Lama Chöpa practice, for example, the Guru Yoga, the Guru Puja practice, we have this the 5 sets of lamas around the main deity. And with the central figure, we have other sets of lamas and deities. And so whether you do it in that way, as in Lama Chöpa, like this 11-tiered kind of lotus petals, or we can also think of just this 5 sets of lamas. You have the central one, the Buddha or the Lama, and then to the right of the Lama you have the extensive practice lineage, starting with Maitreya, and then to his right, to his left, are those of the masters of the profound view lineage, starting with Manjushri and down. And then in the front of the Lama, you should imagine those gurus or teachers from whom you have directly received teachings. And then behind the Lama, you have to imagine Vajradhara and other deities. So in this way, we have the 5 sets of gurus. So, in other words, even if you don't have many different lamas as such, but then you should at least, have these sets of lamas, and particularly your lamas from whom you have received teachings directly, and then you can do your prayer of refuge and bodhicitta, and so this is about the visualization of the lamas, and then also you can, in short, you can also have just what your Lama or the Buddha, and then without having too many different deities and Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and so forth, but just your called a short version of your Lama. And then and then having the visualization of the Lama there in front of you, then you should arrange the offerings. Now, with regard to the offerings, what happens is the offerings that you obtain should not have been obtained through deceit, because then that doesn't become a pure offering as such, and then they must be arranged beautifully as well. And so, in other words, I mean, you do your best. Whatever offerings or gifts and so forth you can obtain, get them and try to make offering of them. Use them as gifts on the altar and so forth. But the main thing is to have a sincere mind, to do the practice well, when obtaining them honestly, and then doing your practices sincerely. So the principal thing here, with regard to the offering, is your own practice, which is in accord with the words of the teacher, and therefore you should have your motivation to make when you make offerings also should not be tinged with these 8 worldly concerns at all. And sometimes when you make offerings and you have the statues of and images of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas also, what happens is you tend to consider them as your possessions, possessions, and like an ordinary object. And then there is this kind of the faults incurring because of that, and in relation to your practice. And so that must not be the case, because when you actually consider that as some kind of your riches or part of your riches or your material possessions, then what could also happen in worst kind of situation is when you fall short of money or resources and so forth for your living, then you might tend to sell them, because you consider these objects of refuge or the statues and so forth as your objects or your possession, material possession, and not so much out of reverence, and therefore you might tend to sell them for money and for your living. So that should not happen. And then the 5 sets of the gurus, as already said, and then you should say this prayer of taking refuge and also generating bodhicitta. Now, having visualized your guru and the Lama in the center, surrounded by other lineage masters and also those other teachers from whom you have received the teachings and Vajradhara and so forth, then having arranged all the offerings and so forth, also you should when it comes to cultivating your faith and cultivating the refuge, the sense of refuge and bodhicitta, you should also think about the qualities of the Buddhas. And so, with regard to the quality of the Buddha, for example, the founding teacher of Buddhism, as Dignaga says, the Buddha was someone who had become an authoritative person or a valid person, and we should reflect on the reasons of why someone like Buddha has become holy for us, or how someone has become that kind of a person, enlightened and a valid or reliable person. And then when we think along this line, reasons. What you can see, as Tsongkhapa says in his praise to the Buddha for teaching the dependent origination. And so, in other words, the Buddha, Tsongkhapa says that the Buddha actually taught us from what his own experience of what he has actually, seen and experienced. And therefore, following after him, there will be no faults that will incur on us. And all the misfortunes, all the degenerations would, be overcome. And all these shortcomings would be overcome from within ourselves. Whereas those who oppose him, when one sees when those who oppose or go against his teachings actually are strengthening or reinforcing their grasping at some kind of a self, a concrete self. And so Master Tsongkhapa says, who speak excellently by seeing it as it is. For those who train in your footsteps, all degenerations will become remote. For the root of all faults will be undone by those who turn away from your teaching. Though they may struggle with hardship for a long time, faults increase evermore, as if being called forth. For they make firm the view of self. Aha! When the wise comprehend the differences between these two, why would they not at that point revere you from the depths of their being? And so this thinking along these lines, and also thinking along what Master Vasubandhu has also said in the beginning of the Abhidhamma Kosha, that the Buddha has actually destroyed all darkness from within his mind. Now here the darkness, of course, should not be just confined to how it is understood from the point of view of the Abhidhamma's tradition, but on the Abhidhamma Kosha tradition, which is a Vaibhashika tradition, or nor should it be understood from the lower school's point of view, but the middle way understanding of this the darkness, which is to say the darkness is this clinging to some kind of concrete independent self, or intrinsic existence in things and self. And so here we also need to reflect on the difference between Buddhist and non-Buddhist traditions. What differentiates these two is the assertion or rejection of the object which is apprehended by this clinging to some grasping at some true called selfhood or Atman or soul theory. And so those who reject it are Buddhists, and those who affirm it are the non-Buddhist traditions. And so in this way we have to understand the difference between Buddha's teachings and the Buddha himself, and then also you'll be able to see the difference in the teacher, the Buddha himself. And by understanding the nature of the teaching in this way, you will be able to understand the teacher himself, the quality, not just because of the teacher himself.
Sure, the Pagwan that you do, and it gets she sent that by the young Rush. Jenny, Peggy Janali, I think, Kopchilia, Nedajuru, Zomanang, she shares to it. I didn't know how to join her. Can that Jazzy, she chaludi, Jimmy Chalura. 강다양 다른 가면 그 가서 파견대 주로 그거 치듯이 파견대 주로 그 담배 자원 제외 이렇게 흉상심을 가게 만들고 디 세타진진기 아니 юм로 떠봐서야 돼 마스 좀 싫어 봐줘야 돼 요래 쇼로가 찍도다 파견대 주로 제셔 시 그미도가 다 루루야서 소디디 오늘 전에 그兄弟 다들 있는 아주 제규 되봐. 젠 상당히 되봐. 상당히 로로 교타이 되고 있어 봐. 오늘 전에로 다 이게 때문에 저 오늘 저도 와. 내가 주로 미 이제 코르치가 자주버지 나처럼 자주로 동라식 숨제 나한테 배도스 봐. 도수제. 더 디비 투미르스 나제 있는 때문에 자르지 거면 어디지? 렉처 가서 하면 돼. 뒤죽으면도 다 최셔야 아주 챙겨다. 저장도 까듯이 가린 줘 삼천수. 남중아주 소시 지금 남주 소신한 또 차셔나 지 까도 여기 있는 이게 다들 규디라서 이게 과요래. 그냥 산제장서 되는 규디라서 되게 하나. 또 파원이들랑 산제 까도도 저 봐도 수고 삼대 소소배 신경써야 보잖아. 나와 사상은 내도 해도 만들 지도 배워 사다들 되네 남교라 집에 진짜 소소 와도만 그게 좀 왜. 매나 얘네 지금 민는 경우가 뭐 배경 하나 좀 얘기해서 저러면 하나 뭐 좀 해라 좀 뭐. 교장 그거 자도 해라 뭐 고소 못 하래 자는 게
So His Holiness was commenting on this statement in the Chamo, where it says, under the preparation, number 4 says, imagine that seated in the space before you are the gurus and of the vast and profound lineages, as well as immeasurable Buddhas, noble Bodhisattvas, Brajeka Buddhas, Shravakas, and those who abide in the Buddha's words. So this phrase, those who abide in the Buddha's words, was what His Holiness was commenting on, talking about also, does it refer to perhaps the 16 Arahats or so forth, or something else. So His Holiness says there's no need to translate this. So number 3 in this preparation is sitting up straight upon a comfortable seat in a suitable posture, your legs either in the full or half lotus position, and then absorb yourself in the practices of going for refuge and developing the spirit of enlightenment. And then at the end of number 4, it says the last sentence, then visualize the field for accumulating the collections of merit and sublime wisdom. And number 5, the cooperative conditions for the production of the path in your mind are 1, the accumulation of the collections, which are favorable conditions, and the number 2, the purification of your mind from obscurations, which are unfavorable conditions. If you lack these cooperative conditions, it is extremely difficult to produce the path, even if you take pains to sustain the meditations that are the substantial causes of the path. Substantial causes of the path. Now you must purify your mind with accumulating the collections and purifying the mind of obscurations. With the 7 branches of worship, which comprise the crucial points for accumulating the collections and purifying the minds of obscuration. With respect to the 7 branches of the worship, the first, the branch of obeisance. Obeisance includes the combination of physical, verbal, and mental obeisance. It is expressed in the first verse of the prayer of Samandabhadra. I bow down with a clear mind, body, and speech. With a clear mind and body speech to all lions amongst humans, leaving none out, those who traverse the 3 times in the worlds of the 10 directions, however many there may be. So this verse is a sincere and respectful physical, verbal, and mental obeisance that does not simply conform to what others do. Do not take as your object of meditation the Buddhas of a single direction in the universe or a single time. Rather, take all the conquerors who reside in all 10 directions, as well as those who have already visited this world previously, will visit here in the future, and are appearing at the present. The Master Yeshide explains in his commentary, even if you bow down to one Buddha, the merit is immeasurable. What need is there to mention the merit of bowing down, while imagining that vast number of Buddhas? In regard to physical, verbal, and mental obeisance, physical obeisance is expressed by the second verse. I make obeisance to all the conquerors with bowing bodies, as numerous as the particles of those worlds, perceiving all of the conquerors through the strength of prayers that aspire to auspicious deeds. Imagine all the conquerors abiding in all directions directions and times, as if you are actually perceiving them as objects of your mind. Also, as you bow down, imagine duplicate images of your body emanating from your body in a number equal to the minute particles of the Buddha's realms. Moreover, you should have initially been motivated by the strength of deep faith in the auspicious deeds of objects of your obeisance. The Master Yeshide explains.
chedo chawa semjeng tanda leya ane tamje tembe다 그 tamje kibi gyur ngoya ro de che indusane 지신나가 마세가 바로 겨어되게 누거디 마소가 좀 보여 그런 거 제가 다 타바토베 체도 다 타바토베 체도 이제 겨어주니 타바체든지 계산해야 돼 근데 겨어주셔도 되게 디체도면 신경이나 타바토베 상다 겨어되게 누가도 도와줘요 다 손을 쳐주셔야 겨어 지금 모든 일이기다 대상토야로 천디기보다 저기 남도 영야로 되게 쳐도 뭐가 얘는 애는 천 다게 있는 천디게 있는 천디가 그거 전부 루스나 애는 계속해 누가 도와주고요. 그래서 이제 인도 정주성 지금 배 점을 좀 봤어야 때문에 된대기 배 삼바 숙타부터는 개왕와야지 계속 그러셔.
So with regard to the dedication of one's whatever merit and wisdom one has collected, one should dedicate them with the motivation of bodhicitta as best one could, even if it may be just a kind of a simulated kind of aspect of bodhicitta. You should do your best to bring up this bodhicitta with motivation within yourself and make this dedication so that your dedication becomes a dedication to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings, to become fully enlightened, perfect Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. When you dedicate your merits like that, what happens is that merit that you have accumulated will not be finished or come to an end until the end of space, because your motivation is to benefit all sentient beings who are numberless. In order to benefit all these sentient beings, you want to become a Buddha, a fully enlightened person. Therefore, the merit never finishes. Whereas if you make dedication of whatever merit you have collected in order to reach liberation, for example, become just an arhat, then that kind of merit that you have collected would be called merit which is in harmony with liberation, an aspect of liberation. Therefore, once you reach liberation, arhatship, then your merit ends there, and then the fruit of your merit ends there. And then, on the other hand, if you dedicate whatever merit you have collected in order to have success in this life, for longevity and wealth and so forth, in this life only, once those goals are fulfilled, your merit also comes to an end. The end of fruit of your merit is there. And so, unlike these, what we should do is to have bodhicitta motivation, even if it may be just a simulated one, a slightly fabricated sort of in your mind, then you should do that. I think I don't know. 베지타로 장아디 따동.
수능이 못 받은 거는 너 대단한 차다 초반에 그거도 소화도 이런 거 안에 뒤에 소소 뭐 이런 거 샤워는 이게 더 좋은 거 이런 게 처지 라게 겨워 저거서 겨 가고 뭐 그런 게 겨워 배워야 유로스 뭐는 상과당 정과당 배워야 겨워는 용어도 체마와다 마와 배워다 내가 손들고 충분히 세번 요원은 남양 문제를 제거돼 도나 상과당 정도 배신 문제를 제거 공부도 되네 미국 사원전에 나 전체부 수업도 와서한테 매제별이 신인을 먹이고는 다 이수 3만 좀 받지 시주라고 받았다. 이것도 가보다. 신인은 그거는 다음에 대권만이 또 받지 신이 와라고 하는 소리가 깨워다. 현신한테 버려두는 여러시고 진짜로 그게 그냥 망도 되보다고 써왔다고 자고. 같은 도장가에 없는 송수야. 단 문시를 지도장원은 이 지금도 그분들이 좀 동문이 검시해라고.
67 дугаар дээр жишг бодит ямар мэт тэгэхэд 2 гээд.
다들 범죄사지 전다지 범죄 차원이 생계 미국의 양방향도 때문에 민농종은 되니 그거 가려서는 통만 매번에 랑성지 원도 규징스 성지 랑거 원도 모듈라 다 지금 조 에너지 묘모 차단되고 semna leyin du zane rang me bu cha yong du wa cha zang ga rang sem ji ka so de sem rang ga wang du mo ju wa rang yi sem ga wang du ju de cha du wa so de yin du zane rang sem ji wang du ju ji sem rang ga wang du mo ju la sem ja nyu mo ba la so be zhiban nam la ji su chok be ni yu de ji ge bu ji be sem di rang ga wang du ju wo chen ne 개회 미국발라 지든 된도도 거도 rumor 제베체 이노스 저 셈 라스 미로와 저 뭐지고 숙쳐버 여댕에 아니 가다 셈 뭐지버서 가다 미 뭐지버서게 아주 찜 뭐지버서 조선 가려도 르소 디도 지고기 찜 뭐지 시험도 조조 생각 가는 정도가 르소게 르지 소에 디도 세야디 패바래 디 패바임이 좀 전디 변나 만한서 지금 류기 지금 튕긴 좀부사 여체 류때고 사 여체 별로 대연아야 셈뭐지부 시부치다지 용도가 류때고 저 여대버디 류소 대와되게 셈그 동에디 세토고 문도가 셈그 디기지 여바이나 류를 침부강에 여바이네 디파 시기는 두고도가 자상가 류소 디두레 셈소 디두디 슉체 여바디 세버로 다 디낭제는 페지 밀리아 미 남주 그 슉체부 여바 인도산에 지점그 남주 체와 여바 디쪽이 레도그로데 망도가 당아 딘지 총나 딘지 좀 명해서 도와 딘지 총나 사베 라와 다가는 신기 대베 유rum부 딘지 텐체 딘지 그선에 김모지 용대야 몽구지 밀도가 든루야 말이 그도 디마도 싫어 되게 믿어가 자 딘지 인도산에 저렇게 생각도 저불리 모던 월드스 러버이나 뭐 야지신데 별로 친구 짱짱 저 상담대한테 류소 디두 따가냐 상담 소지마도 디 이조 디두 간 상셨다면도 자자가 딘지 인도 뭐 짱짱 상담도 선조된 디디 다 전부 야치를 여러마다 신 든주 상담다다 라고라고 쳐도 든주서 저 류소가 간다 이류단의 사상다야 말이 밀레 이류간의 상다 여버체니 상다 여더버디 그거를 결례무지 견을 친체 동현내 배야 저도 선날 남도 시우세 지금 담면도 타고 시우세 애니 자와던 대바도 디지털이 배 시우지 sem 초연도 애니 sem 배 뭐지고 용되는 것이 용도가 그래서 다 되는 인도잖아요 나는 삼월로 애니 소상 인우저 상월로 동해면도부터 대원대버 상월로 열어 동해서야다 대화주야게 탑당에 열어 봐 그래서 다 되는 인도전에 다 대화주야다 동해서야 öbe지리 탑당에 열어 다 세제 동해디 다 주제 대화서야디 yani luzo kana samda chik yilu kana samda chik ta yilu kana samda ta de ta di nyambu di luzo tunghe da dewa sayadi chingobu da jedowa ko lu de dan jewe ni zane su ta su yido ta nyamba chi shimba chi kazo da chi shimba yani ro sangwa ta 지다가는 시기에는 rekja 상아 dinjig 토네 룰 디기데 여러다 봐. 다 디릭 섬이야 디데게 뭐가. 자 디리 인도잖아 류소르게 동에디 뭐 야제 토네 세투요. 류소게 대와 숙셔 도야 칭매 튕지기 토네 뚝뚝요. 봐. 다 이류 관계 동에디 칭매 세투도 가서 뭐지 없어. 이류 관계 디기 친구를 두두면도가 뭐 배우로 좀 보이나 아니 선나라 내가 지금 대화를 잘해 야 가서서는 야 섬드는 배 되기도 저들이 인도잖아 간다 이류 땡기 동에서야다 대화를 해야 돼 이류 코랑 가네 상담으로 저들이 인도잖아 다한테 섬랑가 왕도 줘야지 정이 대화를 동에면 되버리 아니 이류 때문에 뒤도 용돼야 돼다 개처부지 차용 인도잖아 다 소수 상담네 다 이류 간에 즉 सम्모지부 용야디 뇽다 이류 간에 심 시디 용야지 다 소수 배주 쳐라 다 다들 랑게 심 파왕도 도야 소쳐도 어디 디시거든 저 디네 이류산에 다 검세하고 그렇다 디셔서
어떻게 ямар мэд тэгэхэд хоёр гэж байна тийм ээ. Ерийн тэтгэх ёсыгээд энэ үеийн
So this comment is on page, the comments to this passage, which is on page 99 under the heading Actual Session, How to Sustain the Meditation in General. Furthermore, your mind tended to be obscured by afflictions and so forth. So from beginner's time, you have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has been under control. Your mind has not been under your control. Furthermore, your mind tended to be obscured by afflictions and so forth. And so what happens here is, so before that, the passage before that, which says, please bless all living beings and so forth, is reference to the prayer for fulfilling three great purposes. And then with regard to this passage, what happens is when we are overcome with emotions, we are more or less controlled by our negative emotions, and it's not the other way around. And so why that is happening, why are we overpowered by our negative emotions, is because our mind is not disciplined. And so our mind is under the control. We are under the control of our mind, and our mind is under the control of these negative emotions, and therefore we have all kinds of problems. Of course, when it comes to sensorial experiences, we have to know that the sensorial experiences compared to the mental ones are more ordinary and secondary, and therefore we have to overcome the mental pain or suffering, and to generate mental pleasure or joy and happiness from within. But But we have to see that, rather than emphasizing the physical, sensorial pleasures, we need to go the other way around to emphasize the mental ones. And so, as human beings, we have this intelligence, the marvelous intelligence, but sometimes we tend to be too clever using this intelligence, and therefore we have lots of hopes and fears because of our own way of thinking, our own way of dealing with things in our mind, and therefore we tend also to give importance to the pleasures of physical pleasure, sensorial pleasure, rather than the mental ones, which to do so is something which even the animals like dogs and so forth do. When they only seek more or less the physical relief, pleasure and joy, and they're not able to use their minds like human beings. And then in the case of modernity, modernity, what we call modernity today, seems to be more focusing, on the case that we are focusing more on physical pleasure and not the mental ones. And this also is like animals. And so because of this cleverness that is in us, because using our intelligence, we tend to disturb our peace of mind with lots of wishes and wants and the greed and so forth. And so we try to be cunning and to obtain what we want on a physical level. And we, of course, having said that, we also we have pain and pleasure, and within the pain and pleasure there's a physical and the mental, and we since we have the pain and pleasure, and pain is something we do not want, and pleasure or joy and happiness is something we want, and we need therefore what we also have is the right to achieve that goal of overcoming the pains and suffering and obtaining the joy and happiness or pleasure for ourselves. And therefore, we must not indulge in the physical, sensorial pleasures drawn from beautiful sights, interesting sound or music, and then good taste and good smell and fragrant smell, and also pleasurable touch and so forth. Material advancements seems to have, of course, brought about lots of physical overcome physical unpleasantness or pain, but not the mental ones or the joy within ourselves. So we need to overcome our pain, the pain that is mostly to do with our mind, not just sensorial level. And so since when we come to understand how important it is for us to draw mental pleasure or happiness, then we must also put effort in. We should know that we must put effort in obtaining mental joy, pleasure. And so we have to see that this is the purpose of our meditation. So here the text says in the beginning of this section, that which is known as meditation, Tibetan term is gom, is the act of sustaining an object of meditation and specific subjective aspects by repeatedly focusing your mind upon a virtuous object of meditation. The purpose of this is as follows. And so rather than just focusing on the physical pleasure, we have to emphasize the importance of the mental pleasure or joy. So thus, it says, thus meditation aims to bring this mind, which gives rise to all faults and flaws, under the control, and then it aims to make it serviceable. Serviceability means that you can direct your mind as you wish toward a virtuous object of meditation. Meditation by jumping to this and that object of meditation, you may consider setting up, according to wish, a variety of very virtuous objects of meditation in no specific order. Though you may do this, you will not be able to take up your object of meditation with this method. Consequently, you will greatly hinder your mind's ability to be directed as you wish toward a virtuous object of meditation. If you have made this a habit from the start, the virtuous practice of your whole life will be flawed. Therefore, from the beginning, firmly determine the definite order and enumeration of whatever object of meditation you wish to sustain. Then strengthen your will by repeatedly thinking, I will not set up something that is different from what I have determined. without exceeding or falling short of what you have determined. Sustain your meditation with mindfulness and vigilance. And number 2, how to sustain the meditation specifically. First, reflect on the benefits of relying on a teacher, such as quickly attaining Buddhahood, and the drawbacks of not relying on the teacher, such as So when you engage in meditation, you also, have to divide your time between actual session of the meditation and then also in between the sessions when you take rest, from the meditation itself. And so within that, you have the preliminary practices, and then when you actually sit in the meditation, you have to go over your meditation, focusing on whatever object you have chosen, and then at the end, when you complete your practice for the day, then you have to do your. When you stop your session, you have to make your dedication. And the drawbacks of not relying on the teacher, such as giving rise to suffering in this and future lives. Then think many times and with an attitude of restraint, I will never allow myself to conceive of faults in my guru. After considering any of your guru's qualities that you know, such as ethical discipline, concentration, wisdom, and being learned, meditate on them until you produce a faith that has the aspect of mental clarity. Then, in accordance with the sutras cited earlier, contemplate how your guru's kindness has been and will be helpful to you. Meditate on that until you develop respect from the depths of your heart. Then what to do at the conclusion? By means of such prayers, as the prayer of Samantabhadra and aspiration in 70 verses, dedicate the virtue that you have accumulated. Do it with aspiration so strong that it will be cause of fulfilling your provisional and final aims. Meditate in this way during 4 sessions, pre-dawn, morning, afternoon, and at nightfall. Furthermore, if at first you meditate for a long time, you'll be readily susceptible to laxity and excitement. If this becomes excitement, and then next session is what to do in the in-between sessions. So it says, in general, there are many things to be done between meditation sessions, such as obeisance, circumambulation, and recitation of prayers and scripture. However, the principal thing to do is, in this context, is as follows. After you have made an effort to meditate in the actual session and are at the point of ending the session, you might not continue to rely on mindfulness and vigilance, and might instead completely let go of what should be sustained, the object of meditation and its subjective aspects. If you do so, your progress will be extremely small. Therefore, even in between sessions, you look at the teachings that reveal the meaning of your object of meditation and recollect it again and again. Accumulate by many means the collections which are favorable conditions for producing good qualities. Also, clear away by many means the obscurations which are unfavorable conditions. By applying what you know, strive at whatever vow you have promised to observe, as this is the basis of everything. In addition, follow the instructions called consolidation with regards to 1, training the mind of the object of meditation and subjective aspects, 2, observing vows, and number 3, accumulating for collections. Furthermore, learn the 4 preconditions.
가서 차괴 님보 아니 믿고 거면 당연 님보 잡아 거면 들 속이 하래. 그도 평기하래. 얘네 싸워르디 다 우면슈는 송은 신기 아니 가서디 당고 물르기 다소한테 가서 저기 녀목을 삼을로 아니 시디 띠무로 되는 거야. 띠무디에 미시버 짬게 띠무 말이 아니 띠무 된징기 지기야. 진짜 송샤다디 사들인도 셰버투 유이도 주 말이 셰버투 기변 주도 유이 다 공연 셰버다. 온불로 때문에 온불 셰버기 배나 미기 온불 유이도 트레이닝 다 이도 오면서 장을 되는 저기로 봐. 나라 이동하는 게 나라 이동하는 게 시르마도 심정권을 이동하는 게 계속해 봐. 저도 나도 되는 것도 와. 저선가 다음에 뵙다와 되기 가사가 다음에 거네. 남의 삼별로지다. 최이 다음에 거네. 풍속의 천배 롱제제 취디에 다도 모르고 인삼별로지 레인주잖아. 그 차단 계약이 싫고 뚝뚝도 아닌 것도 와. 뒤두지지 나한테 생각을 못 싶어지. 볼라래. 그래서 아메리카 가시면 그들은 청아 토가치면 있고 저는 콩다 로급주 그새는 질레샤 내만 가지 투브래 저는 오콩그 디스도 와 콩을 로만 그냥 미치 콩으로 안에 심 투등에 디스자를 맨주징에 질레샤 쳐봐 말해 그래서 콩기 디스도 셰단계에 그도라 다니 셰단계에 유디 미두고 싶을 통계 아래스 나와마다 싶을 통계 아래스 디 미두고 차 자적 급주 담아 콩도상에 거래스 남도하고 쬐샤스 디 생리비 계셨다 다들 고불루기 아다 레다 녀모 남도래 대다 쬐래 신 송샤고 딱 살으셨다 그다 간다지 동해 영역에 레디 녀모고만 잡아레스 녀모인디 취미지가 남도가 잡아레스 다 취미지가 남도 스탠드디 남도가야 미두고 자적 구주배 남도라고 야 꿰시면도 대응도 매댕해지 봐. 자 대대비 주미 이직 남도디 관계 주물스나 된지기 줘야 주물이스. 대다 줄레스. 저번에 동보 니기 각버리고 세송셔야 돼. 다디 장조 상동다. 남사도 용말에 로직 나로래야 가고래. 로카셰도 상당다 semnalo 땡땡 디켜봐시도 타긴 쉬어야들 가사가 담에 겁네 나를 이동하는 게 세게 나디 축도고 매 사바시겠다 나슬도 민자 따유자고 놀지글래 다 나를 이동하는 게 사기 지기 편에서 속도로 쏘지 여대바디디에 넣고 되는거는 좀 해봐 따디하다 가스기 중소에 퀀텀 피직스 하지 생지부터 따디 생지 기술이 quantum physics 되기 간다 수급 집이나 다도 전에 니기메도 quantum physics 시도 봐 다른 식자 다 나는 시베 간다도 quantum physics야 시가 physics로네 간다 치료 수제 간다 시거를 마도 나 상도 간다 아더도 세르부스 상식이 등미도 와 저들이 이르잖아요 간다 생지에 치유 지금 가서 올 때 숙소체 디디 다도 전에 니기메도 quantum physics 또는 셔요. 다 차단계 인도산에 취미지가 남도가 저때가 여바디 다 천지고 셔요도. 저상에 셔야들 산제비 중내 송셔부터 저야디 다 뭐네 주 차들잖아요. 대 잡아지는 입에 던지러 봤다. 잡아 마셔봐. 지봉봉신 송셔오면 잡아지는 송셔버진도잖아요. 다 천지부터 잡아지기도 와. 잡아지는다 셔되는 데 저야다. 이제 라로다다 초용은 지기. 나한테 자가게 되지 nuclear physicist 두쟁기 생기지 뒤진게 뒤처로고 생각하죠. 거기서 quantum physics 하더래. and quantum physics 하디 아니 저물이 디가라 아니 르네 디 사바치 그래서 르네 서거를 다가다 디 뜻이 아니 사바치레스 야가나라 로니동 코네 뜻이 니 사샤스 공기 고물루르고 숭지 로빈사 너 디나라 quantum physics 숭 단다디 quantum physics 단다도 상대샤스 지상 코나 야가를 진주잖아요. 야가 저물링기 사바치 돼야지 야가나로 니동 코네 니 사샤스 코나 야가를 진주잖아요. 코나 뽑아니 좀사 어디서도
So with regard to attachment and anger, what happens when we have attachment is we are actually called clinging to something that we see as beautiful, and then we become angry when we averse something. And now, in order to counter these two, what we have meditations, the kind of meditations that we have are like to counter attachment. We meditate on the ugly nature or called the filthy nature of the object, such as the body and so forth, that we become attached to. And then in order to counter anger, we have meditation on loving kindness. So of course there are said to be countermeasures to these two negative emotions. Of course they do direct, right in a moment when you think along those lines of when you are attached to somebody, when you meditate on ugliness, it helps. And when you meditate on loving kindness, when you generate love, the anger may go away. Right in the moment, it will help. They will help. But the root of these negative emotions, attachment and anger, according to Master Nagarjuna, is ignorance, and not just mere not knowing something, but the ignorance which kind of holds on to true, some kind of true objective existence in things. And so and now, since this is the case, how do we actually go to that root and overcome it? Is through the meditation on selflessness or emptiness. And therefore, within the selflessness, you have also the selflessness of persons and phenomena. And therefore, when you meditate on selflessness of persons and phenomena, and see that things do not, things and people and beings do not have any kind of true objective existence, that in turn helps to counter your grasping at that kind of true independent existence, and that in turn helps to reduce your anger and attachment towards things as well. And when we think about ourselves, we say, oh, this is nice, this is bad. But when we talk about something good or bad, we always have this notion that this is good because it is good to me, and something is bad because it is bad to me. And so without relating to ourselves, we do not think something is bad or good. And so because when we have the notion of an I related with those perceptions, we also tend to have this concretization of the self, and therefore the good and bad. And therefore, to reduce that, we also need to meditate on selflessness of persons and phenomena. And therefore, attachment and anger will also reduce. And so this is not only what we would say, but called that our anger and attachment actually project beauty, some kind of beauty, and that is not there in the object, or some ugliness or repulsive nature of things that is not actually there, but we also project with our attachment and anger. And this is not only what we as Buddhists say, but also some scientists. And for example, there is one American scientist, Aaron Beck, who is a psychiatrist and treating people with mental sickness. And I have met him many years ago, and he told me this. But then recently also I met him when I visited America. And so he says that when someone becomes angry at somebody, what happens is the person sees the other person to be totally negative. But within that negativeness, that perception, 90% of it is merely a mental projection. And so, since this is what he says as a scientist and not a religious person as such, and I don't think he follows any kind of religious faith, but as a scientist he says this. And this is exactly what Master Nagarjuna also says when he says, when you put an end to karma and delusions, you have liberation. And karma and delusions come through misconception, and that misconception in turn comes through some kind of a mental construction, and that mental construction or reification is ended by or exhausted by the meditation on emptiness. And so since we say that something is whether something is attractive or not is related to your way of seeing it, and therefore you say it's attractive to me, and therefore when you say it's attractive to me, you also have this notion of an I, which is some kind of objectively existing, and also the attractiveness the object also the attractive object also it seems to have some kind of objective existence, independent existence from the object side as well. But even modern science, like particularly quantum physics, says that there's nothing whatsoever that exists objectively. So, of course, modern science is focused more on matter, physical things, and so therefore they say there's nothing objectively existing in terms of the objects that are outside of us. But when it comes to these emotions that we deal with within, we also have to understand that these negative emotions, this negative attachment and anger, also grow in us, happen because of our misperception, some way of kind of distorted way of looking at the things, which is like a technical quote called wrong kind of mentation. And so scientists also say, as I said in relation to Aaron Beck, that we have this kind of mental projection onto objects and then say this is nice or good and bad and so forth. And so these people also, of course, explain these things, describe these things, not without they do this, explain this by doing analysis, investigation, and over a long period of time, and then they come to such conclusions. And it's not said without doing any kind of work or an analysis into things. And then I know one Indian scientist named Raja Ramana, and who was a quantum physicist, a nuclear physicist, and he said to me that with regard to quantum physics, this concept, it is something in modern world, it is something was discovered recently. But then in India, he told me that it had already been discovered 2,000 years ago. Why then? He said this is because he had read Nagarjuna's, one of Nagarjuna's texts, and he actually found that idea or the concept of quantum physics, that there is nothing objectively existing in that text, and therefore he felt proud. Subject harta. Restraint said to Dirish 102. Practicing restraint with sense faculties, 6 sensory faculties. Dirish. So restraining the sensory faculties on page 101. There are 5 parts to this section. The first of which is that with which you restrain the sensory faculties. To restrain, you restrain them with a constant maintenance of your mindfulness and continuous persistence in mindfulness. With respect to these two, the first, maintaining your mindfulness, means that you practice your mindfulness repeatedly without forgetting the teachings about restraining the sensory faculties as well as the other preconditions. The second, continuously persist practicing at mindfulness means that you practice your mindfulness continuously and with respect. What you are restraining is the 6 sensory faculties. What you are restraining them from is the 6 attractive and 6 unattractive sensory objects. How to restrain the sensory faculties has 2 paths, and they are as follows. 1, guarding the sensory faculties. After the 6 sense consciousnesses arise based upon their sensory objects and faculties, the mental consciousness produces attachment or attachment for the 6 attractive sensory objects and hostility towards the 6 unattractive ones. Guarding the sensory faculty means protecting your mind against such attachment and hostility and making great effort not to produce them. Number 2, practicing restraint with the 6 sensory faculties is actually stopping the sensory faculties. For instance, you don't let them engage those sensory objects that will produce afflictions when, for instance, looked at. Furthermore, guarding the sensory faculties means neither to take note of the 6 sensory faculties nor to imagine them, and to achieve this through restraint, even when a sinful attitude such as attachment arises due to forgetfulness and an abundance of the afflictive emotions. Take note of refers to perceiving and paying attention to the intentional and unintentional appearance of sensory objects such as forms that you should not look at. Imagining can refer to mental consciousness, apprehension of sensory objects that produce attachment, hostility, and ignorance. And after the 6 consciousnesses have perceived them, it can also refer to hearing about the sensory objects from others and then imagining them despite never having perceived them. Restraining means protecting the mind from being afflicted and then setting it on something that is ethically neutral or virtuous. Here, the time for setting the mind on something that is obscured and unethically neutral is not when the mind is apprehending a virtuous object of meditation, but at other times, such as during physical activities. And then next section is acting with vigilance, the foundations upon which you act. This section has 2 paths, the 5 actions of movement and the 5 actions of the activity in a temple. The 5 actions of movement are actions of the whole body, going out to other places like towns and temples and returning from them. Number 2, actions of the eyes, both slightly looking at various objects because you have seen them unintentionally and fully viewing those objects you have intentionally looked at. Number 3, actions of the limbs, fingers and toes, stretching out and contracting the limbs, fingers and toes. Action number 4, actions of religious robes and arms, bowls, handling and making use of 3 kinds of religious robes and arms. And number 5, actions related to arms, eating, drinking, and so on. The 5 actions of activity in a temple are actions of the body, actions of speech, actions of mind, and actions of day and the actions of at night. And then next section is acting vigilantly with respect to the foundations. So acting vigilantly with respect to the 5 above mentioned 10 foundations is as follows. When you begin either movement or activity, right from the outset, act conscientiously and establish mindfulness with respect to that action. Imbued with both of these, analyze the elements of the situation and analyze how you should proceed. Then think about and arrive at an understanding of the situation in light of what you have concluded. In this regard, there are 4 elements. The element of basis, with respect to any of the 10 foundations, those of the actions of body and so on, you should analyze what will be happening and how to proceed, and then consider the situation in the light of what you have concluded. For example, with respect to actions of going out and returning, understand the manner of going and coming as it is taught in the text on discipline. Then reflect while going and coming. Now I am doing this and now this. And number two, the element of directions. With regard to directions, you analyze to discover what will be happening and how to proceed, and then consider the situation in light of what you have concluded. For instance, when going out, do not go to 5 places, one that sells liquor, and so on. Having understood that you should go to places other than those, be vigilant with regard to this when you go out. The element of time. With regard to any period of time, you analyze it to discover what will be happening and how to proceed, and then consider the situation in light of what you have concluded. For example, once you have understood that it is proper to go to town in the morning, but not in the afternoon, act accordingly and be vigilant at that time. Number 4, the element of actions.
그 대마타게 끄는데 상부에는 개월치 끄는 냠바에는 디볼은 줘야지 선생님 이르자니 니 딩아도 다과 형들 되잖아 그니 뭐니 쿠베 그도데 계속 야오지 세다야지 다 개회선 소수는 유 공직 와연에 강로다 공부쳐와 상담에 이해를 봐 셔서
And so here Sonus goes through this the time in relation to sleeping. It says that when you go to sleep, before sleeping, have set up your mind in a virtuous state. And within that state of mind, virtuous state of mind, you should go to sleep. And then when you do that, what happens is your whole sleep will be turned into virtuous, will turn virtuous. Because the sleep itself is one of the 4 mental factors which are known as the 4 variables. So the other 3 are regret, and then also analysis, mental factors which are known as analysis and investigation. And so these 4 are that. And then with regard to the virtuous state of mind, it should be, what you should actually generate before going to sleep is that virtuous state of mind with which you have most familiarity with. And so if you do that, it will be good.
부인의 сэтгэл агуулаад унтчих юм бол нойрмоо төрчихтэй буян болоод хувирчиж байгаа. Ийм л ашигтай зүйл байгаа. Тэгэхээр энэ дээр сайн анхаарал унтахынхаа өмнө өөрсдийнхөө одоо буйны сэтгэл юу гэдэг юм тийм ээ. Аль амархан төрж болох. Тэр буйны сэтгэлээ өөртөө агуулаад төрүүлж одоо бодож байгаа унтчих юм бол нойр нөрөө буйны дээр
or sleeping though.
Энэ дээр одоо та бүх сайн анхаараарай гэж.
ой. 现实你们说的，上面对这上面吃对面也最好的自助出去的，然后在外吃过的多呢，这帮啊的什么用说，咱们团队都吃过的，我说到对了，我们活动的细心的这个送了，最近我的这个你给是一个这里这种能说我年根据你。 听说没别太阳，特别都没到我这，我最记得这我呢，有的什么了，差不多这个差点了，改为这最远到我真的差不多了。
So on page 107, how should you sleep? During the day and in the first of the 3 portions of the night, spend your time during virtuous activities. Then sleep when the middle portion of when the middle portion arrives. For by sleeping, you will enhance your elements of body, which are benefited by sleep. When you develop the body in that way, you or your body will be most serviceable for employment in both kinds of joyous perseverance in groups of virtues, and this also will be helpful. When you go to sleep, first come out from a meditation room, wash your feet, and then enter your own room. Then lying on your right side, place your left leg upon the right and sleep like a lion. As for sleeping like a lion, among all animals, it's the lion who uses superior capacity, confidence, fortitude to subdue its opponents. Likewise, one who joyously perseveres at practice instead of sleeping will use superior capacity, etc., to subdue opponents and will at rest sleep like a lion. This is unlike the sleep of hungry ghosts, deities, and those who are involved in desire, for they all have laziness, weak perseverance, and little capacity to subdue opponents. From another point of view, sleeping on your right side like a lion means that your body naturally does not become limp. Even when you have fallen asleep, you do not lose your mindfulness. Your sleep does not become heavy. You do not have bad and sinful dreams. But if you should sleep in some other way, all the faults that are the opposite of these four will arise. There are four kinds of thoughts with which to fall asleep. 1, the idea of illumination. 2, mindfulness. Number 3, vigilance. And number 4, idea of rising. So conducting yourself in this way while eating and sleeping involves no misdeed, since acting purposefully in this manner will clearly stop you from wasting so much of your life. I have explained it as the nobler Sangha citing sutras determined it to be. Everything that I have said here about how to act before, during, and after, and between sessions applies to all the meditations described from here through, and including the section on insight. The only exceptions are the distinctive meditative procedures during the actual sessions. This concludes the explanation of what to do in between sessions. Next, chapter number 6, refuting misconceptions about meditation. There are persons who have not begun to recognize that the classic scriptures and their commentaries constitute personal instructions, and who, therefore, might have the following qualm. When you meditate on the path, you should do only stabilizing meditation rather than repeatedly analyzing your object of meditation, for repeated analysis was discerning.
Tene 전부 다 중세 고교가 하나다.
그렇지.
전쟁 파도 스포 그래지 전부 연구하래. 다 중세 고교. 다들 시도 고교 수준에 다 롱을 되는 거 고교하래. 이내야 롱의 주의치를 내셔도 되고 막 롱디 잡아서 타고 지냐 신의 상담 보고도 와. 그래서 또 동시에 타도는 저거랑 또 그래. 그 롱디에 신고 때문에 롱디 나지는 슈 겨워요네. 와다이네. 무슨 참아도 제가 참아도 제일 내가 민이다. 뭐 심한 대상담에. 근데 다 롱디 차려서 해야 돼. 배는 로주 숨도 차샤나. 다 로주 숨뭐 겉돌니. 또 스테이지잖아요. 어떨 때면에 뭐나 전에다 이집회도 삼네. 애는 롱 공수창네. 상다 연구와. 내가 롱들을 잡아채니 이집토가 뭐잖아. 롱을 쓰고 시설을 패마서 자 되는 인도잖아요. 가다 산지의 추가 도단데 산지의 추치도 사고를 빼 날린데도 추기고 도단데 다 리베 잡아채니 맞는 유대한 대학에 시르지 바로도 씹어 송도가 그봐 자 장수가 바로도 씹어 송는 리들이 또 시럽 세들 미가시는 송이었고 다가도 산지의 추기 냠는 자들이 상월로 또 시럽을 넣었다니 근데 산에 살 공도 줘야 산에 살 포야 산에 시죠 고모도 줘야 소는 신게 싹 공내 공도 줘야 소놈의 절론을 포야 절론의 통론을 포야 통론의 공론을 포야지 냠샤간 보고도 뒤사보도 제대로 그걸 보고 본다 자 심기를 소지를 제대로 그도 선을 담으러 봐 냠샤 그도나 동이도 다 코를 봐 저선 어디지 인도 어디 내지한테
So the comment was about relying on scriptures. And of course, when it comes to relying on scriptures, we also have to understand that just saying that, oh, this must be so because the scriptures say so, is not enough. Even with regard to the scripture itself, we have to be able to confirm the information that is taught, what is taught in the scriptures, through by finding that very scripture also being called free from the faults of through the three types of analysis, and such as by doing seeing that what is said earlier and later in the same text are not inconsistent, and also what is said explicitly and also indirectly or implicitly, and what is implied also are not inconsistent, and so forth. So we have to be able to see that the scripture, that the quotation that we draw from the scripture also is authoritative, and that it is not inconsistent with this teaching within that context of what is said earlier and later, or what is said explicitly, implicitly, and so forth. And so in this way, then we can say, oh, this scripture is without any fault. It's flawless in teaching such and so. And so in this way, we have to take the teachings of Nagarjuna as well. And so when we find that the scripture, that these teachings that they have given are without any fault, then of course we can also see the truth in their teachings about the very obscure subjects that we do not have access either through our direct perceptions or through the general kind of inferential cognition. And now, in order to be able to say that, of course, we have to base our experiences or understanding based on the observance through our direct perception, and then also the things which are said to be slightly obscure, but we can come to the conclusions through reasoning, not just resorting to scriptures. And so when we are able to do these, then we can also take the scriptures to be also authoritative. And moreover, what is important to understand is where we talk about, in relation to the six perfections, we talk about the perfection of wisdom. And so the teaching itself is named after the perfection of wisdom and not others. And therefore, what it shows is how important it is in Buddhism to understand the teaching of the Buddha, how important the wisdom and our intelligence is when it comes to teaching of the Buddha. To understand the entire teaching, we have to rely on intelligence, which means reason. And in fact, when we go along the path, progress along the fivefold path, what happens is, in order to progress from the path of accumulation to the path of preparation, from there to path of seeing, and from there to path of meditation, and then finally Buddhahood, we can see that it's not this progression doesn't happen during the post-meditation session, but within the meditative equipoise, state of meditative equipoise, you actually jump or shift from the path of seeing to the path of accumulation to the preparation to seeing and meditation, and then finally the Buddhahood. So which shows the importance of wisdom, the role of wisdom leading us through this progression. So I think Holiness was commenting on this passage on chapter 6, 109. Therefore, for study with someone what you intend to practice and come to know secondhand. Next, use scriptures and reasoning to properly reflect on the meaning of what you have studied, coming to know it firsthand. Thus, you need both repeated analytical meditation and non-stabilizing meditation, because meditation involves both non-analytical stabilization on the meaning of what you originally intended to practice, that was determined through study and reflection, and the use of discerning wisdom to analyze this meaning. Therefore, to claim that all meditations are stabilizing meditation is like taking one grain of barley and saying, this is all the barley grains there are. Moreover, just as study must precede the wisdom that comes from study, the reflection and reflection must precede the wisdom that comes from reflection, so too meditation must precede the wisdom that comes from meditation. As this is so, meditation means becoming familiar with what you have ascertained, using the wisdom that comes from reflection. Therefore, it is said that wisdom that comes from meditation is a product of wisdom that comes from reflection. Thus, the depth of wisdom that comes from your studies is commensurate with your studies. The breadth of your reflection is commensurate with this wisdom, while the depth of wisdom that comes from your reflections is proportionate to your reflection. The magnitude of your practice of meditation corresponds to the depth of your wisdom of reflection. The magnitude of your practice of meditation corresponds to the depth of your wisdom of reflection, while your ability to stop faults and achieve good qualities is commensurate with your practice of meditation. Therefore, the scriptures and their commentaries say that study and reflection are very important for the practice of meditation. And then there's an objection and response, and so with regard to meditation, there's meditation where you take some object and have the image of object or that object form on your mind, which is called Tönam, and then with the aspect of the object. And then there's also the meditation whereby your mind itself actually is infused with that meditation, whatever you're meditating on, like compassion. So that is called Shenam, that meditation with the aspect of mind. So Rinpoche quotes Venerable Maitreya on page 111. It says, as for the branch of certain differentiation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, it is repeated reflection, comprehension, and definite discernment that constitute the path of meditation.
가다 심 개별로 저들들라 kumri 용ala tönyi georwa tönyi sayadi mi chaguni tönyi yameduwa tönyi sayadi yi chongni tela goba jumsen tongni ene sosu tangdolani ene gombaji 가서다 당돌라니 ene ko bezusha kumrisha yongurwa 그러면도 시 차를 그래이나 차 켜지시 샤시거다 거 믿어가게. 그래서 이제 인도산에고 견도 연도 통화성이 잡아채니. 아다 뒤 연대 열스기도 견 열스기도 설럽잖아. 들으시거다. 이주서서도 그게 믿어. 다 견열당 이 개변 여당 뒤에 상당 잡아채. 다 딘데가 전에 내가 얘기했는데 다 뒤통이 게임 거로. 나는 되니 게임도 달라이는 준주잖아지 거로. 엔 달다네 로 kum지제니 이네 로를 요태야지 하도가. 사진이 인도 과다티 시고하시죠.
And so, with regards to the practices, what must happen is we should have actually some kind of interest in the subject that we are going to meditate on, and in order to gain that interest or develop that interest, what we must see is the benefit of doing those practices, and also we should be able to see what are the shortcomings or the faults of not doing those practices, or we should be able to differentiate between what are faulty and what are beneficial, and then differentiate between these two, and then because of this, when you see the benefit, you will be able to have the interest, and that leads you to pursue what you want, and therefore meditation or practice, doing some practice and meditation and so forth must come from your own willingness to do this. Nobody can actually force you to do meditation or any other practices without your willingness, because even if you may just be obedient to the person and who actually obliges you to do, but makes you do something by force, you will not have that kind of enthusiasm in doing it, and then at some point you will again backtrack and not continue with the practice. And so there must be this willingness that comes to pursue the practice that comes through by developing your interest, and then once you develop the interest, you also will do analysis into the nature of things and try to find its benefits and so forth. And once you understand that benefit, you will pursue it. Cautious. And so His Holiness was commenting the comment that His Holiness made was in connection with this is also the major cause of teachings declining, because those who have this misconception do not recognize the classic scriptures and their commentaries to be instructions, and therefore belittle their value. So on page 112. So question, if, as you say, there are two types of meditation, analytical meditation and non-analytical stabilizing meditation. What kind of practice involves analytical meditation, and what kind involves stabilizing meditation? So reply, I will explain this. Analytical meditation is necessary for meditation, such as those on faith in teacher, the great importance and difficulty of it, obtaining leisure and opportunity, death and permanence, karma and effects. Rather than impermanence, karma and its effects, the faults of cycling existence, spirit of enlightenment. This is because these meditations need an awareness that is long-lasting, very forceful and capable of changing the mind. Without this, you will not be able to stop the forces that oppose these meditations, such as disrespect. Furthermore, the development of such powerful awareness solely depends upon the repeated meditation with discerning analytical analysis. For example, when you mistakenly superimpose many attractive characteristics upon the object of your attachment, you produce intense attachment. Similarly, when you think. We're on page 113, the last paragraph. So furthermore, by using discerning wisdom to conduct analytical meditation on the meaning of the scriptures, you understand the many attributes of good qualities of the three jewels and the like, and you then greatly increase faith associated with these attributes, etc. Also, once you have used analytical meditation to comprehend the many faults of cyclic existence, you develop great disgust for and disenchantment with cyclic existence, and you then see the benefits of liberation from many perspectives. So you then diligently seek liberation. Using this meditation, you even fathom the spirit of enlightenment then, and the many wondrous activities of the sixth perfection and so forth. This greatly increases your irreversible faith, aspiration, and joyous perseverance. As all of this is based exclusively on the use of discerning wisdom in order to conduct analytical meditation on the meaning of the scriptures, the intelligence should in this manner bring about such certainty that others cannot sway them away from it. Those with a very small understanding of how to meditate might say the following: If you do too much analysis with discernment and sustain that in meditation, you'll hinder your concentration, which is one pointed upon a single object of meditation. So you will not achieve firm concentration. Reply: I will explain this. Concentration allows you to willfully fix your attention on any single object of meditation. If you have not already achieved such concentration, then this concentration will not develop. If you attempt to achieve it for the first time while analyzing many objects, therefore simply do stabilizing meditation to achieve concentration until you attain it. If this is what you mean by your qualm, then I agree. However, you might assert that if you do too much analytical meditation prior to achieving concentration, you hinder your concentration. If this is the case, then it is clear that you do not understand the way to achieve concentration, as it is explained in the commentaries of the great trailblazers. For example, when a skilled smith repeatedly burns gold and silver in a fire and repeatedly washes them in water, they are purified of all their defilements and residues. The gold and silver then become very soft and pliable. Hence, they are ready to be transformed into whatever ornaments you want, such as earrings. Likewise, you initially use your discerning wisdom to meditate repeatedly on faults, such as the afflictions, the secondary afflictions, karmic effects of wrongdoing, and the faults of cyclic existence, according to the order in Scripture. According to the order in Scripture, this makes you completely displeased or disenchanted. By bringing this to mind, you turn away from the grip of non-virtuous things and clear away these defilements, like burning gold in fire. Next, you use your discerning wisdom to meditate repeatedly on good qualities, such as the good qualities of a teacher, the great importance of leisure and opportunity, good qualities of the three jewels, virtuous karmas and its effects, and the benefits of the spirit of enlightenment. But again, according to the order in scripture, this causes the mind to become moist or clear, like washing gold in water. Bringing this to mind directs the mind towards the virtuous group of phenomena, causes delight, and then moistens the mind with virtues. Once this happens, focus your mind on what you want to achieve, either meditative serenity or insight, and you will accomplish it without difficulty. Therefore, such analytical meditation is the superior method for achieving non-discursive concentration. In the same way, the noble being Asanga says. For example, in order for smiths or their skilled apprentices to purify silver or gold of all defilements and impurities, they burn it in fire and wash it in water. By doing this, they understand that they make it into this or that ornament by way of its serviceability and pliability. Then those who know the appropriate craft and smiths and their skilled apprentices use the smith's tools to transform the metal into whatever kind of ornament they want. Likewise, yogis and yoginis become disenchanted by simply not turning their mind toward any impurity or defilements such as covetousness and so forth. And so
투시부 원진디 투시부 겨와자소 라미제 저자에네 나우돔다 죽돔다 단 죽돔다 왕사만 죽어야 다서니 나우돔이야리 자들이 인도자네야 지 장조야 전수선배도 보던 아주도 보도 저지 담시 캐면도 내 그도 막 모두 천지经过도 죽고 거디에 그 캐게요 말이 죽네 왕고라네 또 보송님은 되게 되는 조야리 된 그도를 모두 천지 다시는 달로 름심의 전선 신인된주 와다 뒤쪽에 다 뒤상 상부 아니 때냐로치다 전에 좀 봐서 되는 마 아니 쉬야체 그래서 아 당연히야 야 뒤상 마용을 드리려나 아니 달로 년대부 지난주 콘서파 름림치야
So we have come to the end of chapter 6, which says this concludes the explanation of refutation of misconceptions concerning the method of sustaining meditation. So in other words, what we have covered so far is the broad topic of how to rely on a spiritual teacher. And then tomorrow we'll have the initiation of Gyawa Gyatso, Chenrezig Gyawa Gyatso, which is within the highest yoga tantra, and so Holiness says that of course you will enter into the mandala, and then having entered the mandala, you'll also be taking vows, vows of bodhisattva vows, and also tantric vows. So this will be explained as we go through the initiations, and then next year we'll continue from chapter 7. Of Lamrim Chemo, and to those of you who are the Mongolians who have come here this time, and if you are not coming next year, you may introduce what we have covered so far to those who are not here but will come the next year.